Social media, everybody's on it. I'm on it. My friend Zach here, he's all over it.
All over it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Big influencer.
yeah, there's a lot to dive into. Social media is a huge presence in everybody's life, and I think it's only gonna become a bigger presence. Traditional media, TV, radio becoming less popular. Almost everything's on social media. And so yeah, I think we got a lot to dive into. I'm back on the podcast, and I'm here with my good friend Zach. Known him for a long time. Used to be next door neighbors
Yeah.
from this house.
It's
So
great to be back, man. Yeah.
yeah, for
Great to be
sure.
back here in beautiful BC.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
where we all started.
Very
Yeah.
nostalgic, honestly.
Literally grew up in the house next door.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. We used to do so much, like the kind of like olden days friendship where you just knock on the door, ring the doorbell, and you're like, "Yo, I'm coming in," and
yeah.
it's like,
I
I
basically like lived here. This is like my second home almost.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
That stuff was really nice, and I feel like that with social media, it would have been different where I would have like texted you or something like, "Yo, can I come over?"
Right.
But
Because there
instead,
would always be that hesitation before like linking up if there was like text messaging involved or like Facebook or Instagram. Like you
yeah,
wouldn't have that like freedom just come over like ring the doorbell. I wouldn't even like ring the doorbell
yeah,
like
no, you just
sometimes because
walk
we were
in.
so like we
Yeah,
basically live in each other's houses like growing up. But we spent so much time outside also and like the NCC
yeah,
like playing soccer, basketball. There's the park right there.
yeah. I feel like it
So
would have changed things for the worse if we had social media, especially back then when we were just young kids. Like this is elementary school we're talking about, and the imagination and creativity that we had to have because there wasn't a social media stimulation or not just social media, phones, internet, like that whole group of things that would have drawn us away a lot more. Because I remember we would just have to make shit up. Like, I remember a lot of the time we'd almost do it was a game of just coming up with random nonsense, but you and I would find it so funny. Like we'd say like it's like this, it's like that, and we were just making up nonsense stories. Like, do you remember that at all? Like,
vaguely, yeah. Like we played definitely a lot of pretend.
yeah, a
And
lot of pretend.
now just like looking at that metal pole now, I'm just remembering like how many times I must have banged my head or like our knees like on that
Yeah,
pole like playing around here or
yeah. Right where this podcast, right where we're doing the podcast right now,
is
there
where we
used to
spend a lot
be
of like
a
pretty
lot
much
of
a
time
lot of time.
playing like video games, or there was at one point I think we had like monkey bars and like some
Oh yeah,
play
there was monkey bars
structure and like a
here.
mat.
There's a mat here for sure.
So yeah, we would have done gymnastics and stuff and
The
like
original Nintendo we had right or you guys had right there.
yeah.
Remember with like the orange gun or whatever, they can plug it into the
Oh
Nintendo.
yeah, it's like the duck shooting game almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, you would have hit your head on that pole a lot. There's a pole just right to the left of where we're
Yeah.
talking right
Might
now.
explain a lot
Yeah,
coming up.
yeah,
No,
yeah, yeah. How things
yeah.
ended up a little bit of
Exactly, yeah.
yeah, bit
But
of CTE yeah,
yeah, a bit
from
of
that pole.
CTE.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, but I think it was good that we weren't consumed by media. Yeah, we had our Nintendo and we had some video games and stuff, but that was
Hmm.
good fun. But it wasn't this constant stream of social media and content
Yeah.
flying in our face at all times.
Notifications,
Yeah, just
like
continual notifications. Like these days, I
right.
find it hard to even go to the bathroom without looking at Instagram or looking at like some sort of content.
It's so boring. Like
Yeah,
there's like to have those periods of like 10, 20, 30 minutes
yeah.
where it's like
Even 10, 20, 30 seconds. Like,
yeah 10, 20,
yeah,
30 seconds without
yeah.
yeah
Like,
that's
one thing I
sorry.
find like almost weird is how it'll feel uncomfortable to even be eating your lunch or whatever and not looking at something. Like, let's say you're at a cafe and you're just eating your croissant, you're having your coffee, but rather than have your phone out in front of you, you're just like staring off in the distance. Like, you feel like I need to be looking at something, I need to be doing something.
Right.
Whereas, like, what would we have used to do like back in the day? We would have just looked and I don't know, talked to somebody if there was somebody there. But if you're eating by yourself, what do you have to do? You have to think. Like,
Right.
oh
Or
God.
just sit with yourself and just
Yeah,
sit with your thoughts. And like it's okay to be bored too. And like
for
but
sure.
that's the thing. It's like having these notifications and this like with the likes and the emails and all these things, they're like little hits of dopamine. And
Yeah,
it's like little dopamine rushes. So back then, like without like the cell phones, even flip phones back then, they weren't like as big.
right,
But like you weren't like so we wouldn't be thinking about that back then because our brains weren't like wired to crave that dopamine rush. And
right.
I think a lot of that, that's what it is. It's like that dopamine rush or that dopamine hit that you
Mm-hmm.
get off like a notification. Even if you're not thinking, even if it's just a text message, like I imagine it's still like a bit of a dopamine hit.
Yeah, for sure.
Like
Like, because I mean, I feel like it's human nature to crave that social connection. You're curious about what other people are thinking, what your friends are thinking just in general, or maybe what they're thinking about you, and how they're interacting with you. So when you feel that vibration or you feel that new notification, I feel like it taps into that that desire for social connection that's been there for millions of years through like
right.
human evolution.
Like that lizard brain sort of
Exactly.
like
Like we love it, but now it's just in the form of it's on our phone and it's like
right.
easy to tap into.
It's
So
not real, arguably, too. It's not
yeah,
like
way more surface level. It's like it's a very shallow connection,
mhm.
but we still really enjoy it. And like you're saying, it gets that dopamine rush going. And I think a problem with that is that um I was like this week I was looking into some of the effects of social media, and I happened upon this video talking about dopamine from the Huberman Lab, which you know, he's a neuroscientist,
Andrew
Andrew
Huberman,
Huberman,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And what he was saying is that dopamine is a non-infinite neurotransmitter, but it's replenishable. So, but he was also saying like, and this is a key part, is if you get extremely high elevated spikes of dopamine after the fact, it'll likely dip down below that. So if it's always high, there's going to be a period where it crashes below normal. And so you want to be cautious of spiking it up all the time.
Sort of like a pendulum.
Exactly,
Actually, my
yeah.
friend, I was having a conversation not long ago with a good friend of mine, and he was explaining sort of the same concept behind dopamine and dopamine crashes
Mhm.
and how it's viewed sort of like a pendulum. So there's like a pain pleasure pendulum.
Mhm.
So like say like we were to chase like pleasure all the time, like chase these things like drugs, like notifications, like these things. You can chase all these things, but eventually you're gonna have that crash, right? Where
Right.
you're gonna feel the pain. So it's like being able to withhold sort of like those like instant sort of like pleasures or gratifications or
Right.
things you feel like doing constantly in the moment. It's like you'll get that pleasure right away, but eventually you'll have that crash, right? Where you have that pain. So he was saying that it's good to be able to chase after sort of like the painful things sometimes. And not literal pain, but things that you don't feel like doing.
Right,
Like
right.
for me, it's been a big thing getting back in shape, sort of building that discipline to
Mhm.
go to the gym or do this no matter like how you're feeling, right?
Right.
And there's sort of like doing these things that you don't feel like doing. And if you're able to do that constantly, eventually the pendulum will swing in the other way. You'll get that
Right.
pleasure, that long-term natural chemical induced pleasure from doing things that you don't feel like doing, but that are good for you, especially in the long term, like
Right.
exercising or like making that phone call to someone that, you know what I mean? Like that you haven't spoken to in a while or don't feel uh like having that phone call or that text message or like
Yeah, for
doing
sure.
this work or like this thing, but it's just pushing yourself to do it no matter how you feel.
Right.
You'll have like super great long-term benefits.
And I think that it makes it easier to do those things that you don't necessarily feel like doing when you understand the how dopamine works a little bit more, because dopamine's like the neurotransmitter for motivation. Like it's a big factor in motivation. So when you're having those dips and pendulum swings of motivation, what might actually be happening is you've had spikes in dopamine, and then later it's down. Later it's gonna go up and down. Like it's not gonna be a consistent plateau. But knowing that, you like from one day to the next, you could maybe manage it better by not overly spiking your dopamine. Like the example that Andrew Huberman, the neuroscientist, was giving on his podcast was, he was saying like it may be best to avoid excessive spikes. So like you maybe you don't want to hammer the pre-workout, take like drink like 5 coffees, go work out,
Right.
do a cold shower, and do all this stuff. All of those examples are gonna like spike your dopamine to a certain degree, but once it's so high, um it's going to drop back down. So later in the day when you feel a bit of a crash and you don't have as much motivation, that might be why. Or maybe it's not just later than the day, maybe it's the next day, you still haven't fully recovered from that crazy spike you had.
Right.
So no, keeping that in mind, if you want something a little bit more sustainable long term, maybe don't go all out in one like 3 hour period of just like elevating everything, because a crash is likely to gonna follow. um, and I think how that could tie into social media is that, like we were saying, every little notification or viewing content, Instagram videos, YouTube videos, all of this stuff is appealing to us, and it activates like the reward and
Like our lizard
motivation.
brain, it touches on our lizard brain, sort of
Yeah, like it
like
activates those the like pleasure centers. But perhaps if you're overly using like looking at content online and on social media all day, you're gonna deplete your motivation. But all you did is just scroll on Instagram for 4 hours, and then
right.
after that, you're like, oh, I'm not as motivated anymore. Um, just something to be cautious of. I mean, neither of us are neuroscientists, but that's like a general thing that my understanding of it is, and more to learn for sure. But it seems like the more you learn about the way the brain works, then you can kind of maybe structure your life and do certain activities so that you get less crashes. You're more motivated to do the things that you want to be doing instead of being motivated to just continue scrolling endlessly on Instagram,
100%.
because it hits those same pleasure centers. And like I'll like, do you ever get this where you'll be scrolling on Instagram or YouTube or whatever it is, and you hit that moment where you're like, what am I even doing here? Like I feel like my brain goes into autopilot mode sometimes, where I'll open my screen, I'll just like autopilot unlock my phone, I'll scroll over to the right, I'll
Yeah.
click on Instagram, and I'll start scrolling, and then I catch myself and I'm like, what am I even looking
Yeah,
for?
you're not
Like,
even like consciously thinking it. It's sort of just like built-in sort of like mechanism. But
yeah.
it's like all it'll take is like that one video or whatever that'll grab your attention. And that's the thing about like a lot of these videos that do grab your, it'll be like political or this or that, or it's like, oh, look what he said, she said this, or look what these people are doing, look what the left and the
Right.
right.
Yeah.
And it's like all these things that'll just like sort of drag you in, but it's not like these aren't like it isn't always positive or
No.
like healthy, or it's like it like it raises sort of like can raise like stress or all these things.
Yeah,
And
like
like all it takes is that one video to drag you in, and then it like you're
right.
saying, you'll just like before you know it, like 10 minutes have gone by and you're like,
Mhm.
what am I like, what is this?
Right.
It's not videos that you would like, oh, I'm gonna like, I'm interested in like going on YouTube and watching, typing in to learn about like a documentary or like this or this. It's just
Yeah.
random videos that grab your attention
Yeah.
and that really pull on those sort of like
Yeah, those like evolutionary strings that we just
right,
have. Like it's almost like social media and a lot of technology has surpassed the human ability to have self-control in some ways. Like our ability only goes so far to control what we want to look at, what we want to pay attention to. And some of these social media and things on the internet are so appealing. They appeal to that like lizard brain, or like you were saying. And we just can't help it. Like we might know this isn't good for me to spend the next 8 hours on YouTube, but it's
right.
just like it overpowers our ability to determine what we want to do. And I think that's particularly the case for kids, just because I know that the areas of the brain that are useful for like logic, reason, and self control are is the area that's later to develop. Like mid 20s is when you more likely when people fully develop. It's like the prefrontal cortex, like the rational area of your brain
Right.
that really governs the self control, and that's not completely developed until mid 20s. So for kids out here, it's especially difficult. Um,
But even like for us, so like I was actually thinking about this like a while back. I'm curious like what you think. It's like this concept of like free will, like how
mhm,
much like free will do we really have? And
mhm,
I was thinking like with like the social media and these big tech companies and like the amount of time like we spend like on our screens or an email, social media, these sorts of things. So it's like we feel like we have like free will, right? Like
mhm,
constant free will. And it's definitely true that we definitely do. But it's like how much do we actually have? Because when you think about it, it's like right now we're having like conversation, like I'm in control of my thoughts right now,
right,
like and I can control everything that's happening right in this moment.
mhm,
But I can't control what I'm going to be thinking 10 seconds from now
right,
or 2 minutes from now
right.
or especially tomorrow. It's like cuz it's like every single moment that we're present in, it's almost like a new it's like yourself is
Yeah.
always you're always just
I
in that moment.
I don't know what my next thought's gonna be. I don't know what my next feeling's gonna be. I don't know
Exactly.
what I'm gonna say like next on this
Yeah, you
podcast.
might yeah.
Like it's all just
You might join
flowing.
TikTok and
Exactly.
yeah.
Earlier I said I'll never do it. Next thing
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
maybe I'm on it.
Yeah,
It's
maybe
just like
next 30 minutes, who knows? Yeah.
yeah. So free
But
will, but that is an interesting point though. I feel like because social media is so powerful, it's maybe limiting. It for sure is limiting our control even more. Like it's because we're so drawn to doing these things, and because the social media algorithms are going to feed you more of what you're currently looking at, you're getting a curated feed on all of your social media platforms, whether
exactly.
it's
It's
YouTube,
different.
Instagram.
For every person, it's like individualized.
Right. So when we're talking about what am I going to think next, if you're constantly absorbing certain like curated social media pages that are like they're purposely giving you more of what you've previously been looking at, the likelihood of your next thought being something more related to what you've previously been
Right.
looking at
Completely
is
originally
higher.
yours.
Yeah,
Like,
so like what am I going to think next? Well, maybe if I'm never on social media, it'll be dependent on whatever else I'm consuming at the time. Like I look at social media kind of like how you could look at um your diet. Like and let me explain this. So basically I look at nutrition as like everything you take in is a nutritional input. Like let's say you have a meal with like steak and vegetables, you're gonna get an input of protein, fats, the vitamins, minerals. Maybe you have some like probiotics, whatever it is, like all sorts of nutritional inputs. And then your output of how you feel and how you function is gonna vary depending on the inputs that you put in.
has a huge impact.
But
Like,
what is but I also like to look at there's mental inputs and that aren't what you're
right.
eating, but what are you absorbing mentally, and that's going to vary your mental output, how good you feel mentally, um
But
maybe how sharp or how productive you are. And so if you're consuming things, which we are constantly, as long as we're like awake, we're looking at things, we're hearing things.
but it's
What
hard not to be like
it's
be looking at things.
for you,
Like,
yeah, I mean it's just the human condition, you're gonna be. But what kind of input is social media? Like that's something that you're inputting into your mind all the time. How is that shifting the output? Because everything you input is gonna slightly shift your output.
right.
What
And
kind of input is that?
if you're not controlling that input, so like those algorithms, like the algorithms built that like like build your personal profile or
Right.
portfolio, however they present it. that's like built to show you things that's personalized to you.
Yeah.
Like we're not in control of that. So like
No.
that algorithm, they own that. So it's their algorithm getting to show you what they want you to see, that what they
Right.
think it's gonna
Gonna
pull
keep you
you
there.
in, keep your attention in the longer, like the longest,
Right.
which I don't think like overall, I don't think that's a positive thing for people's mental health or for like society as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
I think people should be able to there should be first of all more transparency
Mm-hmm.
like into what's happening behind the scenes, like in the back end, like what these algorithms are doing.
Right.
And I think each person should be able to control their own algorithm. So it's like so
Right.
you're able to get a positive experience
Yeah, that's actually
from
a really good idea. Like
like the social media.
almost like as soon as you log in, like you get to pick which algorithm you want. Do you want the one that's going to show you the
Exactly.
same things that you've been liking? Do you want the one that's completely random?
Right. Like conspiracy rabbit holes
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah. The
yeah.
Great Reset, just
Exactly.
all
Yeah.
those type of videos.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on the rabbit holes, social media is because it shows you just more of what you're already looking at. And maybe it's human nature to look at the things that are a little bit more out there, a little bit more inflammatory, the things that give you a bigger emotional spike.
It's like driving by a car crash. It's
Yeah.
like things that are like you're sort of just like driven to like to look or sort of like
Right. Yeah, you see that crazy
it's
headline
like
with that clickbait title and it's
yeah.
like uh yeah, you want to click on that.
Yeah.
And because why would you click if you have two options and there's some like boring title and some boring
Right.
thing? That's just not as stimulating. Of course
Like
you're going to click on the thing that's like yeah,
like
just
Kim
bizarre
Kardashian
news.
did this or like scientist discovers XYZ molecule
Yeah,
or
it's like
it's
get
like
out of here.
oh it's
Yeah.
like you know
Yeah. Kim
yeah
Kardashian got a new implant. I mean,
yeah
holy fuck, yeah, click on
yeah
that quick.
exactly
But yeah. Yeah, it's I think and that's why you hear people say social media is polarizing because it feeds you the same sort of content. So let's say you go down a rabbit hole of like right-wing media or left-wing media, whatever you're choosing, you're going to watch a couple of videos, then next thing you know, YouTube, Instagram, they're going to promote more of that same sort of
right
content. You're
and
going to
like further down it's not
yeah.
like you're getting less and less rabbit holey videos. It's always there's only one direction it
Yeah,
goes
yeah.
down and it's like
Like and that's where you get those crazy conspiracy theories and maybe you could speak more to this like the QAnon stuff. I don't know.
yeah yeah
I don't know as much about it, but like I that what you were describing earlier kind of sounds like that is like you find one thing you're like, "Oh my god, there's this crazy conspiracy theory."
yeah
And then you see another video you're like connecting all these dots, like you're building like a map in your basement with all the pins and like the strings
exactly
and
like
you're
oh
like,
I figured it all out
yeah.
like look like you know like with those you know those strings that
Yeah.
they put with like the thumbtacks in the walls
Yeah,
like
you got it all mapped
yeah
out
I
like
figured it out. Bill Gates is connected to whatever
yeah, yeah. It's
but
like that movie, fuck, I forget the actor. It's like the National Treasure or whatever, where he's like trying
oh
to solve
yeah
those puzzles.
Nicolas
Yeah,
Cage
Nicolas Cage.
yeah
He's like going
yeah
to like the like libraries and like
National
the
Treasure or something
Declaration
like
of
that.
Independence. He's like flipping through
That
pages.
was a solid
Yeah,
movie
yeah,
back then.
yeah. Those were pretty good.
Yeah.
But like
Uh,
that's what's happening all over the world now. Is there's people trying to be Nicolas Cage in those movies.
yeah.
They got their own map set up, but what they're searching for is like perhaps something that's not even real. Like I haven't looked into this too much, but I remember watching the Social Dilemma and they were talking about Pizzagate, like where some guy there was like this whole thing that this particular pizza shop was like had kids in there and like they were like locked up and stuff.
Right.
And this guy he was got wrapped up into this conspiracy theory. He had his tacks all over his board and the strings flying all over the place, and it all led him to this one pizza shop. And he was
Oh,
like, the kids are in the basement. But apparently he went to this pizza shop and he was like ready to like take down these people that were locking these kids up. And turns out there wasn't even a basement in that pizza shop, but he had it all set up in his mind
right.
because he'd been watching these videos and had this whole map set out. And yeah, but nothing was actually happening.
That's the
But
thing. There's real world consequences to like a lot of these like things and like
yeah,
like ideologies popping up and like, but like that's the thing with like conspiracy theories, like the word conspiracy,
Mm-hmm.
like it gets used to like sort of like diminish, or you just
Yeah,
call someone a conspiracy theorist and you don't have to deal with that person. But
for
like you look
sure.
around, it's like a lot of things that's been happening, it's like very questionable, like the people in power, like the global elites, it's like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't seem like they're acting like in our best interest, or it's like a lot of things the government are doing, or like
Yeah.
just like basic corruption around the world. And it's like as it's a story as old as time. Is like the
Mm-hmm.
people in power, like if they have too much power, they can become corrupt, and
For
absolute
sure.
power corrupts absolutely.
Right.
And so like some of these people that fall down like these rabbit holes, like they have genuine intentions
For sure.
to figure out like what's really going on.
Yeah.
Like, or some people like what like lost their jobs, or with the 2008 financial crisis when the market crashed,
Mm-hmm.
like, or people are invested like heavily invested into the system or built their businesses, and then out of no fault of their own to have that taken away, or all of a sudden, oh, there's no money in the bank, or actually your mortgage, it's sorry, it's gone, like because
Right.
the banks were playing games, and like
Yeah. People
based
get
off like an over accumulation of fictitious wealth, it's like
right.
sorry, your money's not like
Yeah. People get like frustrated with the government, and then there's maybe it's appealing certain conspiracy theories because they'll explain some of the things that are confusing to people. Like there's
right.
unexplainable things going on in society, but then a
The
conspiracy theory pops up and it's like, well, we know what's going on. It's this.
right.
And maybe it's not necessarily true,
Or
but
like
it's
there'll
appeal
be
I see why it's appealing at least.
hidden like small truths within. But
Yeah.
like that's the best way to sell a lie, is put like a little bit of like sprinkle a bit of like some truths
Yeah.
in, or like this is real.
Appeal to people's frustrations and emotions,
Yeah.
and like they're frustrated with what the government's doing. There's a new conspiracy theory that's like kind of goes against what the government's doing, and
Exactly.
and then people jump on board. And but I do also look well, like what you're saying about how people can be really dismissive by just labeling an idea as a conspiracy theory and be like, no, that's nonsense. And but they maybe overuse it because they'll just plaster everything. Oh, that's conspiracy theory. Every time
Right.
anything's ever questioning the government, especially, some people will be like, oh, that's conspiracy theory. Oh, that's conspiracy theory. And there's too many to really dive into what's what. But
Yeah.
yeah, for sure, social media, like social media is basically like an amplifier and a spreader. Like these conspiracy theories, they might have been around. They would have People would have had conspiracy theories 100 years ago, but it would have stayed in their small little community. Like you have a few buddies and like you're just talking to them, and like
Right.
there's one guy in your community. He's like, "Yo, do you hear about this crazy
Yeah.
thing? Like the government's trying to do this to us." And then the word spreads, like you go to your like church or whatever, you tell a couple other people,
Right.
but it's not spreading at such a crazy degree that it
It's not
is
become
now.
there's no viral like chance for it to become viral, or
Yeah, for sure. And it's probably not presented in as appealing of a way. Like now people can make like really fascinating YouTube clips that have the dramatic music and like
yeah.
all the visuals that you're like, "Oh my God, they are doing
Yeah.
like the
Like
government."
UFO videos, or
Yeah.
like, but like even then it's like there are like
Yeah.
UFOs, it's like they admit in the US, it's like, yeah, this technology, we don't know where it comes from.
Yeah. We
Like,
don't know what that thing was on that video.
and like what do they call it? Because they don't call it
Oh yeah,
UFOs
it's like
anymore. It's like they're trying to change the name because it has such a bad rap, which
yeah.
I don't blame. It's like
Yeah, unidentified flying object is what it used to be, but now it is something else now. I forget.
yeah,
But
but
yeah, like those conspiracy theories definitely would not have gotten spread as much. Um, but it's just an amplifier to everything, really. Like it doesn't
exactly.
necessarily need to be bad things. You can spread really wonderful messages that, again, they would have got stuck in your small little
Right.
community, your church, and just a
Or like
couple of your buddies know.
The Secret. Remember that book, The Secret?
Yeah.
Like it was telling people how like the secret to life or
Oh,
whatever
okay.
is like,
Yeah. So
you know,
you would have
but
had,
yeah,
yeah, it would have been like, yo, look, I read this book. It's
yeah,
nice. Check it out. but now you can just blast it on Twitter, like share it on YouTube, Instagram, and the reach is just so much further. So it's like social media obviously has its benefits. You could see some like beautiful videos that really change the way you see things. You could find some podcast clips that you're like, wow, this one's
Yeah,
really interesting.
100%.
But yeah, I social media is a
It depends how
it's
you use it. It's like a tool a little bit,
mhm.
but like like based off what you're saying, would you say um like social media is the cause of like polarization, or it more precipitates a lot of the polarization sort of happening?
Yeah, I think it just amplifies it. Like that polarization would have been there,
Right.
but I think one thing social media does that maybe enhances it more than what it used to be is the fact that it just continues to feed you the same type of things, and it's so engaging and a lot of people are addicted to it that maybe they're less thoughtful than they used to be. Like it what maybe back in the day, like some lad in your community would say something to you, and you would you'd have to think about it longer. Like let's say he tells it to you at you're at this like event and then you leave, and on your walk home you don't have much else to do because you wouldn't be able to listen to music on Spotify, you wouldn't be able
Or
to listen to the
just
radio.
Google it to see
Yeah,
if
you
what
wouldn't.
he's saying is true,
Exactly. So
or
you'd have to
like
think about it a little bit more for yourself and spend that time thinking, do I really agree with what this guy's saying? I don't know. And,
right.
and so you have that period versus we're just constantly stimulated by content and uh like
The answers are all there. It's like you don't need to like think so much if you want to know something. Like
yeah.
the answer's all there. Like how far is the moon
Yeah.
from us?
Like
Oh, I don't know. Like you think about it, or
I wonder if
like
like memory will almost be like a thing of the past. Like the area of our brain that's used to remember things. I wonder if as time goes on it's slowly gonna like diminish and become smaller because we're not using it as much. Like things like remembering geography aren't as useful as they used to be. Like now we just
right.
let's pop in Google Maps. I don't need to remember where that thing is.
It's a bit of
Google
a
Maps will just tell
problem.
me. I don't need to remember that fact about history. I'll just Google it.
Right.
And so we're not working our memory as much as we used to be.
And your concept of like spatial awareness and orientation, even for myself, because like
Hmm.
even like getting here, I was using Google Maps a little bit, or like getting to lots of places, just using Google Maps and getting used to it.
Hmm.
Like I don't have to like think or like about the directions too much. So
Right.
like it would be harder to just figure it out
Yeah.
without Google Maps. Like, you could do it, but
Eh,
it's not like we don't have the same practice of like that spatial awareness
for
and like
sure.
directional.
And if you don't use it, you lose it. Like legit. And if you use it more often, you'll develop it more. Like I remember hearing this example of taxi drivers in London. Um, their brains were they did like neuroimaging in some way, whether it's like a CT scan or whatever, and they saw the area of the brain that's used for direction and navigation in these London traffic taxi drivers. It was developed way more than your average person because they basically had the whole city mapped out in their mind and they had to constantly be thinking, which street do I turn on, where do I go to drop that guy off, and so they really developed it. But if you take the opposite of that and you just never use certain parts of your brain because Google does it all for you, that part of your brain's going to slowly go down. um so I mean social media and the internet, maybe they're like evolving us in a certain direction. Is it positive, is it negative? I mean, we'll see, we'll find out. Like
For in terms of memory, it's I think it's definitely negative, and
yeah.
like directional awareness, definitely not a good thing. Cause like what happens if like the power goes out, or it's like these sorts of things
Oh yeah,
where
we'll be lost.
like
Like
Rogers was out not long ago, right?
I know people were panicking. Like it was like it
Yeah.
was like a free for
Well,
all. Like it was
debit machines
like
weren't working and all across Canada. And like I remember I woke up and I checked my phone and like the Wi-Fi wasn't connecting and my
yeah,
cell service wasn't on. So I thought it was a problem with my phone,
right.
but I couldn't figure out until I heard like on the radio that it was out. I didn't know there's no way for me to like message someone to know what was going on,
Right.
or like check online to see what's going on.
Yeah, and
Like,
it's like people, you almost be lost without, because you come so accustomed to and used to having your phone ready to search up whatever you want,
right.
getting that like constant stream of entertainment,
Right. Watch a
like
podcast or Audible in the
always something.
morning or whatever.
Like I feel like the challenge of today's society is the challenge of managing the abundance of stimulation versus 100 years ago it would have been the challenge of scarcity, or like
Right.
200, 300 years ago where maybe there's not a lot of food, there's not a lot of entertainment, not a lot of news. Like it'd be like really the amount of entertainment we're getting today and amount of stimulation is just like hundreds of times more than what you would have had 300 years ago.
I think it's more so we get more information in a day than someone would have gotten their whole life in like 1920 or like early 1900s.
Right.
That's like their whole life of newspapers, of this and that. Like we can get more in a day
Yeah.
from just like,
And it's overwhelming sometimes too, like the amount of things, like you can only know so much. And
yeah.
there's just like articles and videos flying at you of like, yeah, this new scientist discovered this and Peru's on fire and like
Yeah.
there's a war here.
It's
Like
not
it's
it's
just
not
like I can't
things like
handle it all. There's just too much.
exactly like yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like do you find that of it's just an overwhelming amount of things to be concerned about, um and you just can't, you only have a certain amount of capacity to care about all these wars and all these tragic events that
Right.
like back, yeah, you wouldn't have had all that information flying at you.
Right. There's too much because like we're emotional, like emotional beings also, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like since we have like the emotional capacity and like the self-awareness, it's like being aware of like every single bad thing that's happening in the world like all the time. If you were to take that in like every day all day, it's too much for like any human person.
Right.
It's not positive. It's not, you're
Mm-hmm.
not going to help the situation
Yeah.
because now you're not a good position perhaps mentally or physically or whatever.
And
Like
I think we lean into the negative stuff too, because from a survival standpoint, it makes way more sense to pay attention to the problems and the negative things,
right.
because if there's like a bunch of good things happening in the news, that's great, but like you don't necessarily need to be worked up about it and really really pay attention to it. But if there's some sort of problem in your neighborhood or some sort of war going on, that I think triggers our like natural human tendency towards
Yeah.
focusing on problems and whatever's going to be more key to our survival. And so yeah, now that you have social media and the news, and you can basically every time you turn on the news there's going to be some new problem.
Right.
They're talking about whatever it is, yeah, like problem in
Ca-
society, a
like
new
cases, COVID
war.
cases are on the
Oh
rise,
yeah.
or
Yeah.
every 2 weeks like
Yeah, a new
cases are on the
variant and
rise, like war in Ukraine, this, and it's just like story after story. And like you say,
yeah,
most the majority of it is negative
right.
or like
Yeah, like I think it's not that social media is, they're like malevolent people working behind the scenes. They've just tapped into human psychology and they know that what people are going to pay attention to. And of course they're going to tap into that stuff because they work on like an advertiser basis where they get paid. The more time people spend on it, the more time people look at the ad, like click on ads or whatever. And so they're basically tapping into human psychology of what's gonna make these people pay attention. Is like you were saying, is it the war on Ukraine? Is it Kim Kardashian's new drama? Or
right,
is it like scientist discovers this
right.
really particular thing that nobody even knows how to pronounce the word? And
Exactly.
so yeah, you're gonna look at that, but that's all it is.
Or
It's
like
like
basic everyday things that are like great or positive, they're not like newsworthy in the space of like news today.
right,
It won't be viewed as like newsworthy stories. Or it's like
yeah,
there are some like positive stories, but it's like rare. It's like they'll just sort of throw it in there like every like once in a while. It's like, oh, and Timmy started this new program,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
like, oh
yeah.
yeah,
Great Timmy, let's
yeah,
go.
and it's
Eh,
like back to the this, or it's like
Yeah,
holy,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, it is good. Timmy,
we
he's
need
on the
We
new.
need Timmys in the world. We
Yeah,
need more Timmys in the
yeah.
world.
No, people really need to
But
start posting more about Timmy. But no, it is good to hear that he's back on that program, and so
yeah, yeah,
yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's not all negative. Like, there are a lot of positive things that come out of it. Inspirational stories about Timmy, and you're connected with people that maybe you would not have been connected with. Like, I think even you and I, like, the first, like, because you were out in BC.
BC for
I
the
was,
last few years,
yeah, so like different parts of the country, and you can stay somewhat connected
right,
on like Instagram or whatever it is. Like,
right.
I can
Because we follow
see
each other through Instagram through the time,
exactly, yeah, so you can like reply to people's stories, which is fun, and like
right.
you see, yeah, it's
It's
cool to
good
see what people are
to
going
stay
what's going on
connected.
in their life, yeah.
Yeah,
And like even now, like my girlfriend, she lives in Vancouver, and we can stay connected on social media.
exactly.
It's
Or
like
FaceTime.
particularly FaceTime, but to me, like, I don't know if you call that social media, but it basically is. Like, if it's not FaceTime, it could be like some other app that you use video calling, but
But that's a
it's
good question. Like, how would you define social media? So it would be obviously like Facebook. Would you consider that social media?
YouTube for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
YouTube.
YouTube, I think so, because there's a huge community of like commenting, and there's like the
Right. It's
likes,
definitely
and
social. It's videos.
for sure, yeah.
Podcasting. Would you consider podcasting is pretty social?
I think so. Like, maybe I don't know. I was thinking about that. Maybe if you're just posting on Spotify and you never have any community engagement, like if you're not actually posting, because is Spotify social media? Like,
That's
not
a good
really.
question.
It's more just like a streaming platform.
I wouldn't consider
Not streaming, but
like when you say social media, I don't really consider podcasts too much in that category.
it definitely can be once you start posting on what we do
Like
call
the
social media,
Instagram
Instagram
or
and
like
YouTube.
making like
Then it
promo
becomes
videos and stuff like that.
for sure. So yeah, some of it's not, but either way, like yeah, like it is cool to be able to share with people all over the world. Like, let's say you have a hobby that you really like, but maybe the people in your direct community aren't huge fans of. Now with social media, I can like jump over my community in a sense and go to other countries even, or different cities, and maybe those people join in on the community.
Right.
So now you're connected with people all over the world, which that's a great thing. And that's one thing that I really found fascinating when I could see the data of who's listening to this podcast is there was a couple people like that were in Europe listening, a couple people in
Really?
the States, and most people just in Canada, and you could see the specific cities, which makes sense. At least for now, just like that, it's gonna be people that I know in the city that I live in.
Like in
But
Ottawa.
it's cool to see. Oh, there's like somebody in Australia that listened to that, and
Right.
I found that interesting. And without social media and without that reach of the internet, you wouldn't get that. You wouldn't be able to connect with people in Asia, in Australia, and so that's to me quite a positive impact. And like I was saying, my girlfriend's in Vancouver, and it's great that we're able to FaceTime. Like, if it wasn't for social media and the ability to do that, then perhaps the connections, they're way more difficult to maintain, and it's yeah. And like I was saying, like, you were in a different city, you can still see what they're doing, and it's maybe very it's a more popular narrative to say social media is toxic, it's having these effects, and for sure it probably is having some negative effects, but there's a lot of positive that comes along with it too.
Exactly. You gotta give credit where credit's due. And like
Hmm.
you say, it's a lot easier to like to look at like the negatives of social media. But like you say, there are like it does keep people very connected and on a global scale or like cross country,
Hmm.
instantaneous like video calls, where it's like that's actually incredible technology, and it has actually innovated like a lot of like in like Facebook has innovated a lot in terms of like communication or like text messaging with WhatsApp and like
Hmm.
the YouTube the videos. So it's there's been lots of innovation, and it's
Yeah.
been lots of definitely positive impact being able to, or for like for businesses,
Oh yeah.
for people being able to start their like business on their own. So
Yeah.
if you want start a podcast or have like a talk show radio thing, you don't need
Yeah.
to deal with like the
You don't
radio,
need
the
permission.
head radio people,
Right.
or like start making content, get into comedy, get into acting. You don't need to deal with the Hollywood industry.
Right.
You can
Right.
build something on your own,
Yeah.
or start like a business in whatever entrepreneurship. You're selling products,
Hmm.
like people selling t-shirts, starting their own clothing brand. Like how would you be able to do your own clothing brand like back in the day
Yeah.
without like a warehouse and all
You
these things? But
you need that like head guy at the clothing brand or like the radio company to give you that stamp of approval to say, yeah, you can
exactly.
you're allowed to do this. You can use the studio. You can put it on this radio station. But now if we want to share a message with the whole city, we can just upload it on YouTube, and what it's going to come down to is what does the audience actually care about and what do they want to listen to, and those platforms and that content is going to rise to the top. So it's not like you get an instant free pass to talk to the whole city and the whole country,
Exactly.
but
Like we
you
don't, no matter what we do, we don't control the market. So it's like
no
no matter what I do, I don't control the market. It's That's what's great about the free market and having like people decide. It's the market that decides, and people are the market.
yeah,
So
it's really opened up a lot of doors because you would have had to go through such like a narrow pathway, and like we were talking about earlier, like the comedian Andrew Schultz, he just put his special up online on some website, and in that case he didn't have to get permission from like the top streamers, and although I think he was gonna go to one streamer, and then as the story goes,
I think
they
it's going
didn't.
to Netflix, right?
Yeah, it was probably Netflix, and
Right.
they thought his jokes were inappropriate, so they're like, no, we're gonna cut this, and he's like, no, I don't want to cut it. So all in all, he ended up posting on his own thing. But I think that's gonna become more and more common, is that you don't even have to go through you don't even have to get like an approval from a streaming platform. You can just put it up on on the internet, on uh whatever, like YouTube's probably going to be the most common one, or whatever platform will take your thing,
But not
and if
just
the people like it, they'll watch it, and that's it.
exactly. And not just be able to take care of yourself, but to be able to make serious money while doing it,
Mhm.
potentially even more than whatever like industry gatekeepers would have offered you in the first place.
Yeah.
And like having that control and ownership over things that you create, content. So like this podcast, like it being yours, it's like a great thing, and having control over that. Or like Andrew Schultz, like having to buy back his special
Yeah.
and then putting it out on his own,
Like
which
his
is a
next
big
one, he's probably going to do it on his own now too. Like
probably.
he's seen the path is better.
But it's awesome to see because he's sort of like a trailblazer in that industry, and
Mhm.
he's opening up the doors for so many of other comedians that typically they would have had to gone through that same process
Mhm.
of dealing with these people and trying to whatever scrape by. But now they see what he did with his content on YouTube, going like fully independent on YouTube
Mhm.
and having become like very successful through that,
Right.
and now having that special. But typically the specials you need to get on Netflix or these things for
Mhm.
it to be big. But now he just proved that you can do that on your own too.
Right.
And then all the comedians, they all see that, and that's an
Yeah.
incredible thing. And it's like I'm sure it's inspiring for a lot of those people,
Mhm.
and not just comedians but other people that are in other industries putting out content, or like they're
Yeah.
seeing the way the tide is heading, like what the way the future is going in terms of like people being able to have more control and ownership.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, and I think what ends up happening is, as long as there's a community for that type of content, it'll rise up. Whereas like in the past, especially for comedians, their path to success would have had to be get on a late night talk show. And
right.
there's only a few of those late night talk shows. And so if the people who are filtering who gets on the late night talk shows just don't happen to like your content, they might be like, no, no, we're not going to let you on. But nowadays, there might be some people that the late night talk shows don't want to have them on, but there's a whole community that loves them. They're just the style of what they do, or whatever it may be, just isn't what the specific late night talk show wants. But they can still have a huge audience, make a lot of money, and have a big platform, and build their brand just because the freedom of the social media and internet has offered them that.
And it's not just that, it's being able to directly connect with your audience or like their
Yeah,
fans.
yeah,
It's like a more intimate relationship too, because you're
right,
not having to go through this and them and then they share it with you.
right,
It's you're dealing directly
yeah,
with your people, and it's your so you're making it like literally for them.
right.
And it's
Yeah, I actually
like
love that.
it's a beautiful thing. It's like an incredible thing the way
Yeah,
it's headed towards that. And it's promising not just for that industry like that industry, but also for artists
oh
or for
yeah,
singers, um like having being able to control their own
yeah,
um like masters or whatever,
right. Yeah, it's
or
like
like
they can control, they have more say in their outcome because now it's whether you rise to the top has more to do with just do people like it than ever before. Because
right
before you would have probably had the, and I don't know the music industry like perfectly, but I think you would have had to get like
like
signed by like a record label and they like you and they're gonna start promoting you. But if let's say they just don't like you, maybe they don't sign you and you have a difficulty getting signed with anybody because you have kind of like a uh unique style of music. But these days maybe you have a unique style, but it's people, there's people somewhere that like it, and then
right
they're going to share it with their friends, they're going to stream it more, and all of a sudden now you're at the top of the charts on Spotify, even though people like maybe traditionally would not have signed you right away.
right
So
you're
you,
able to
you can
build
squeak through
those.
the cracks kind of.
Exactly, and build those small communities sort of like globally, that's you're able to connect communities globally,
Yeah,
even if it's not like a large amount of people, but they're still connected and they're still a community, even if they're not in the same country,
yeah,
city, or what have you, right?
yeah. That's why I find like just doing the podcast really appealing, because you can reach out to people all over, and people who are interested are gonna tune in, and people who aren't just aren't. But
Exactly.
it's like you it's problematic but also beneficial that you you get the people that agree with you and like your content, they all will be able to find you. And the next thing you know, like you're just surrounded by people that are interested in your content. And that's beautiful for the community's sake, because you have all these people that are maybe like minded, they're interested in similar things, and you can have a community of thousands of people. Whereas like 200 years ago, it'd be hard to have a community of thousands of people that all are interested in like the same thing, because
Right.
you're going to be limited to whoever's literally like physically around you, and odds are they're not all going to be interested in the same things. But now with this you can have a much greater reach. And yeah, it's just it's such a competitive market too though. Like if you go to like high school or even elementary school and you ask like kids, what do you want to be when you grow up, a lot of them are like, I want to be a YouTube star, I want to be a
Right.
TikTok star, an influencer.
Influencer.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's really competitive. And it's similar like that in the music industry. Like so many people are trying to make music. So it's great that you can reach way further. But because there's a great thing, I think what comes along with that is that more people want to jump into that because they're like, oh, that's cool, I
Exactly. It
can
becomes
reach far.
harder, a lot harder to break through. I
Hmm.
think like not like a few years ago there was probably like a million podcasts total,
Yeah,
and I think today it's like over 4 million.
yeah,
So
it's
it's like, and
madness.
that's just podcasts, and you look at like YouTube videos or like other things,
Yeah,
and it's like
it,
anyone can start it. And
yeah.
it's like, which is a great thing, like anyone can do it, but
Hmm.
like you say, it's if you want to be able to break through, it's very
Difficult.
competitive.
And
And
yeah, so you have to do things differently, or like it's got to be like the production or the quality of the thing is better and more appealing than what currently is on the market. but it's hard to compete with some of the people that are like super well established. Like for me with podcasting, if I want more people to listen to it, why are people going to listen to this podcast when they have podcasts like there's like the Joe Rogan Experience, there's Andrew Schultz, there's like so many podcasts that are really well established. They've been doing it for years and years. They're also like a lot of them maybe they're entertaining in besides the podcast, like they're comedians, they're entertainers, they're this, they're that, they're educators, they have their background. And so when we know there's 4 million different podcasts online and you can only watch or listen to one podcast at a time if you're really trying to engage in it, why are people going to listen to this one or tune into this one versus tune into the other ones that are maybe have better audio quality, better visuals, better they're better in a lot of ways. It's a difficult thing to break through, especially when you have those well established podcasters out there already that people are like, oh, I love that. Like I have so many podcasters that I'd love to listen to, but there's just only so much time. Like
Right.
there's a bunch of comedian podcasters that I love to listen to, like Theo Vaughn. There's like Bobby Lee and Andrew Santino do a good podcast. Um, but like there's only so much time in a day, and all of a sudden you like 10 podcasts, they put one out every week. There's 10 hours of content. You just can't do it, so you got to pick your favorites.
Right.
And if you're picking your favorites and there's the Ollie Lewis podcast or Joe Rogan just had a huge guest on his podcast and you only have an hour to listen to, which one are you gonna pick? I mean, I for everybody who's listening to this now, I think
Yeah.
you know the answer.
But
But
but everyone had like even Joe Rogan or like Lex Friedman, all these people they had to start somewhere, right?
oh
And
yeah,
it like
yeah.
it takes time to like build that up. But also what I've noticed is like with all the media and all these things, it seems like anywhere you're getting information these days, it seems like a lot of people they have an agenda or it's
Mm-hmm.
like they're
Mm-hmm.
um sort of presenting like narratives and it's very hard to find sort of content or podcasts or news or these forms of media where people are just like being real, having genuine, honest conversations and trying to figure out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about your podcast, it's not just Ollie Lewis, it's just you speaking to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
What's great about this is you're having conversations with people
Yeah.
and like
And it's I like it for just what it is besides the recording. Besides recording, and this one's actually filmed, but like besides all of that, I find I really enjoy conversations like this where we dive into a certain topic and yeah, like you and I, what other time would we have an hour or more long conversation specifically about social media?
right,
And I like learning new things, so that it really encourages me to learn new things. Like this week before we did this podcast, I was looking up a couple things about social media, and I've done that for all the other podcasts, whatever the topic may be. You look into a couple things, and it's fun, and it's fun to have this conversation. Like I know our friends, family might listen to it, and that's an interesting thing to me. Like even if you
right,
don't have a billion people listening to it, people might comment on it and say, "Oh, like that was interesting what you guys said there. I disagree with what you guys said there. What you were saying about conspiracy theories was like
right.
completely, yeah,
Completely
yeah."
out.
So, but like it's all fun to me. Like whatever
Yeah.
engagement happens, it's yeah, it's a fun thing. So in and of itself, like this conversation, you take the mics away, you take the camera away.
But like
It's still fun.
we could
Yeah,
definitely have super like when we have had long conversations even like without the podcast. So it feels a little bit like
yeah, that's true.
I'm just talking to you and like I know there's like the camera there and the microphone
Right.
and like it does feel a bit awkward. It's my first time like doing it.
Yeah.
But like I think it's great. Like I love having conversations, learning
Mm-hmm.
and also like for me it's like I don't like the way I see it, it's like I know like don't know exactly what's going on. Like I admit whatever I believe I might be wrong, but
Yeah.
if I am wrong, like I want to know like
Right.
what it is and it's like just being able to figure out like what's going on or understand like
Yeah.
concepts or like having conversations. I actually enjoy having conversations with people that think differently or that are like very intelligent or that have different ideas. And
Right.
it's just like I learned so much. You can learn so much from like everyone.
Right.
It's like everyone, every human being you meet, it's like very interesting person. Like they all have their story,
Yeah.
and it's like, and it's easy to forget that like when you like you're walking by people on the street or like at a bus stop, but it's like if you sit and have like or just get to know these people or have conversations with people, you'll find like people are very interesting and everyone has like different perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Yeah,
it's good that we all get to share. um like it's good like here in Canada that we have a free democracy
for
and everyone
sure.
gets to share and have different ideas and
Yeah. Yeah, like everybody, yeah, they do have their own different story, and everybody sees things just a little bit different, and having these long form conversations allows you to really get to know what people are thinking a little bit more than these quick clips and like the
exactly.
format you see on TikTok. And yeah, like it's way easier to hate on people when you just see like a quick clip, and but that's not their whole identity. That's not who they
Right,
are.
like
They
taken out of context or
for
what
sure.
have you, because we're able to have like we're talking about social media today, but we're able to dive deep into lots of different topics
Yeah.
because it touches on so many different things, right? Social media.
Yeah.
And since we're touching on so many different topics,
Right.
um
And yeah, like you're saying, like you and I probably would have conversations like this outside of podcasting. I was just thinking more like to have it kind of confined to the topic of social media. That may be less likely, but even still, like it's not like it's like a 10-hour thing. It's just like an hour chat and mostly talking about social media. So
right.
yeah, but that's what I really do like about this is that it's um you might be doing this anyway, and you just throw the mics in front of
Right.
you.
Why not share it with the world?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting, and
Yeah.
I also like what you're saying about it's kind of like having the beginner's mind of let's just I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say. I only
Right.
know what I currently know, but in doing this, it's a practice, and like you're gonna learn things, new perspectives about what the other person thinks.
Right.
Um, and the more you continue to do this, uh, the more you're gonna learn. Like I was feeling a little bit weird about how I didn't end up looking into as much about social media as I wanted to. Like there were a couple other videos and some notes that I wanted to take. Um, but at the end of the day, in doing what I did, and then in talking to you, that is that's a stepping stone, I'm better off for it than um
Having
having
just
done
like
nothing.
or just done like looked at those videos like on your own or
Yeah.
be able to have like discussions. But that's the thing about podcasting that I find so interesting too, and that I find like really cool, like what you're doing here, is that when you think about podcasting, it's like the most real form of human interaction or connection
Yeah.
is having conversations. And there's a big lack of that, I think,
Oh
with
yeah.
like when you watch the news or like even YouTube videos or these sorts of things, unless
Yeah.
it's like a long form, it's you'll get like clips or sound bites,
Mhm.
and you, like you say, could get taken out of context, or you
Yeah.
can present people in a certain way, or
I think the nice thing about podcasts too is it's hard to it's hard to like curate it so much that you lose the authenticity. I mean, you can if you like chop it to bits and like edit it like mad,
right,
but a lot of the content online, it's made so that it's engaging all the time. It's like it's
right,
compressed and it's formatted in a way that it focuses so much on pulling on those the strings of like psychology that they know that are going to draw people's attention and keep their attention, but it's so focused on that and not as much focused on the maybe the authenticity or the actual like
the
quality
nuance,
and yeah, the nuance and the details and
right.
Um,
Because like say you could understand like why you think a certain way, but it can take lots of time and like backstory,
mhm.
like understanding the person, like like as a person to understand why they believe what they do believe or why they
Right.
came, why we can be presented with the same facts but draw different conclusions.
Mhm.
And it's like to be able to have those conversations like just long form with nuance and oh because of this but actually this, and
Yeah.
it takes time figuring like dredging out the details, and like, if you want to like understand things or understand
Yeah.
what's really going on in the world, it's complicated.
It's really, yeah, it's really like it is way more complicated, like you're saying, and I think I'm really glad that podcasting has kind of picked up steam on social media, like on YouTube. There's some podcasts that have millions of views, and people are willing to tune in and listen to the podcast for hours, because it'd be a shame if people pick and chose their content and they chose the stuff that's way more exciting in the short term, like TikTok. And I'm sure there are a lot of people that are like,
Right.
no shot, I'm listening to a 2 hour podcast that's just way too long, and it doesn't engage them as much as somebody dancing on TikTok would. So they're just gonna not do it, and there's gonna be people like that, and that's fine. But I'm glad to see that there are people that are really into podcasts, and because I think what podcasts can do that a lot of the other shorter form content on social media can't do is that, like you're saying, it dives into the nuance. You can really get to understand somebody's perspective. Like if
Right.
you see a 2 minute clip of some politician or some controversial figure,
Right.
you can only see so much about who that individual is, and you don't know who they are as a person. You don't know their background. You don't know where they came from. You don't know why they're thinking what they're thinking. You
All
don't
you
know
know
their
is
motivations.
they said what they said and made them look this way or that way,
Yeah.
and it's like
And that's, I guess, something that social media maybe can be problematic with, is you'll see these clips, everybody might jump on the same bandwagon and want to like shoot somebody down, and it's way less personal than sitting face to face. Like
right,
if if let's say you were online posting about some stuff on Twitter and I didn't know who you were,
like made a status of like this is this or
it'd
whatever.
be way easier for me to just criticize you and like
Right.
talk shit about you, and like shoot you down online.
Right. You're an
And
idiot.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, but if let's say you got those two people that are arguing on Facebook and you're like, hey, let's sit you two down.
Right. So
Let's get the
like have a
mics.
coffee together. Like you
Exactly.
would
Yeah,
never.
split a croissant, like just like
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
good time. And
Exactly. Tim Hortons muffin maybe or
yeah, get some
yeah.
farmers wraps for each of them. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
farmers wraps for
Yeah,
sure.
I have 2 for 6 coupons usually on my
Oh,
Tim Hortons app.
there you go. You have to share
Yeah.
those.
So yeah,
Yeah.
but like if you did that, you get those people, you sit them down, you actually have that conversation. It's way more personal, and because social media can a lot of the time dehumanize the person that you're criticizing or talking to.
Right.
So you no longer realize, oh, this is a person that
It's
is
a
actually
human
just a
being.
human being.
Yeah.
They have their
Could
story.
be like a mother, it's a mother, father, someone's sister, someone's this, someone's daughter.
Yeah,
It's like,
like it'd be way harder to just be like, you're stupid, I disagree with what you're saying, you need
right,
to get erased off of the face of the planet, because you're with the person, you realize, oh, I can kind of see where this person came from, and even if you're not face to face, I guess a step back from that is listening to them long form on a podcast, because maybe you hear their whole story, maybe they explain why they believe what they believe.
right. And it makes more sense.
Yeah,
Like,
it makes more sense. You might still disagree, but you at
right.
least can empathize with how they got to that conclusion, and you're like, okay, I kind of get why they're there. They grew up in that environment. They've been here. They had that thing happen to them.
Right.
So I see why they maybe find that idea appealing, or why they want to go in that direction, and then it just makes way more sense. So yeah, that long form thing is good, and it just humanizes people a little bit more.
Because,
Like
like, also my experience with people generally is like 99, like most 99%, pretty much everyone you deal with is like people are great. Like, people are very nice. You go, like, talk to strangers, like, people are like great, generally speaking, like
Yeah.
almost 100% of the time.
Hmm.
Always like, some people you'll disagree with or whatever, but
Yeah.
generally speaking, people are great.
Oh yeah.
But like online, it's you see some of these comments, or it's like some people are savage or whatever, and it's like
Yeah.
the way people are like interacting with each other, it's like it's more than just negative. There could be whatever, like death threats and these things or
Hmm.
this, or it's like very toxic, and it's it's like you say, it's not, it wouldn't be happening if people were
Yeah.
sitting down, or you see the person. It's hard to say like really mean things to a person
Right.
when you're sitting like across them.
Oh yeah.
It's like, even if like it's your greatest enemy or the person you hate the most or whatever, it's
Yeah.
like you don't feel like doing that.
Yeah, it's
It's
way more difficult. Like you're connected on social media, but you're also really disconnected from a lot of the regular things that would be there in a human interaction. Like you
social cues,
social cues, yeah, you see their
right?
body language. You're also going to be way less likely to want to say crazy shit to them because they're right there. Like things, they're physically there. Like you don't want to get into like a physical
Right.
confrontation, so you can't say the same things. And
Right.
you actually see this a lot online nowadays. Is like people will almost act. They get so used to acting in a certain way on social media, and they'll continue doing that in real life, and they'll like go up to celebrities and say stuff to them that I feel like without social media they maybe wouldn't have wanted to do. Like there was a video of some guy bothering Mike Tyson on an airplane, and like you get so used to talking shit to these celebrities on their like you because now
Right.
you can talk to them directly on Twitter, on
Oh,
Instagram. You
that
can comment.
cameo. There's like those cameo things where you can.
Yeah, it's like you're now able to connect with these celebrities that you weren't able to connect with before, and you're
Right.
you're both on the same platform. Maybe they have a blue check, but it's basically you're equivalent to them in a lot of ways. You both have an account, and it's the same thing. You have the same features and functions on your account, and so now you can talk shit to this guy, like a famous actor or whatever, and say your new movie was shit. I hate you, like all whatever you want to say. And I think it gets people used to doing that, and now some of it's spilling out into the real world, where there's a video of somebody annoying Mike Tyson to his face, and maybe they would have done this like online, just like criticizing Mike in the comments or whatever, and they
Right.
get so used to, oh, there's Mike, me and him are the same, we have the same account, I'm gonna talk shit to him. But there's this clip of the airplane and the guy's annoying him, but now it's face to face, and Mike actually did turn around and just punch the guy like a few
Yeah.
times. And I think people, it's a different thing. In general, I think people are going to be less likely to criticize you
Right.
face to face because they still feel that. But I think also some people
Or
have
like,
gotten so used to just saying whatever they want
right.
to
And
anybody,
zero
and it
consequences,
and it
because
translates even into real
yeah.
life like a little bit.
Yeah, because in real life, if you say those sorts of things to people, definitely Mike Tyson,
Yeah,
but also
yeah.
other people, some people might get really upset, and there like
Hmm.
might be consequences, or
It's
like
like
you got to accept responsibility for your actions. But even like words said on like social media, it's like, are those technically like actions, or is it's like it's not the same as like real life actions, right?
yeah,
So it's not
it's like yeah, you have that bubble. Like you have like a shield around you that is the internet, that is like your social media account. Like you and the other account are not actually fully connected. You have that gap
right.
between you. And what it reminds me of is when people are driving and they have road rage, um, because you're in this like safety of your car, you might like you might scream at that guy who just cut you off and yell at him and like be like fuck you, like I wish
Right.
this happened, like,
Yeah.
and you'll see people flip out in their cars just like crazy road rage. But I swear if that was just somebody cutting in front of you in line,
Right,
you're
or
not
just
going to do the
like
same thing because they're
exactly.
right there. You have this like this shield that is your car, and I feel like it's similar when you're online. You have the shield that's your internet, and internet's even worse because you could have like you could be anonymous. Maybe
It separates you from your actions. It's like this
yeah,
huge wall or a huge wedge that makes you feel like you don't have to, like, you can do whatever. There's no like consequences. You have to accept responsibility. Especially if you're anonymous. It's
Yeah.
like,
You just
or
say whatever you
whatever.
want. You can be
Because it's
like
not
online
you.
troll and just
Yeah.
like get under people's skin.
Some
And
people do like
oh,
online troll or like
a
whatever.
lot. Yeah.
It's like I don't really understand, but
Yeah. No,
it's
there's a
like
lot of that for sure. And it
yeah.
can get pretty toxic because I think, yeah, they forget that these people are actually human beings, and some celebrities or people that post content are more sensitive to it than others.
Right.
But I know there's some, I've seen some people on YouTube that it really bothers them, the people, what people are saying in the comments, especially because some people can be so nasty because they are anonymous and they don't have that, they're disconnected from the person they're criticizing.
Right.
So they'll say uh like, I hope your family, like they'll like wish
Right.
certain things with
The
their family,
worst
the
things like
worst things you can imagine.
imaginable.
And the people are reading them, and when you read that comment,
Yeah,
it
it's
feels
like
as if it's like a legit thing of like, oh Jesus, like all these people want my family to like dead. It's like
right.
it it's it hits maybe the same as if somebody was actually saying it to you. I don't know. It's that disconnection's for sure there.
But even then, it's like a lot of those comments are bots, or how
Oh
do you even
yeah,
know if they're
yeah,
real people if it's like behind these accounts? Like
yeah,
that's also a big problem with like social media or YouTube or what have you.
yeah.
It's
That's
like what percentage of these accounts are not even real, or
right.
like coming from foreign actors or like this, or they're
Yeah,
trying to just stir up things, or trying to trying to divide people, trying to rile
right.
people up, trying to do this, push like political things
Agendas.
this way, or like affect the elections or these
Mm-hmm.
sorts of things. So
Yeah,
it's like
that is a really good point because I think these days social media is probably the biggest influencer on who gets elected and then who then leads the country and has a significant amount of power and
right.
control.
Twitter, Facebook, I think mostly, right?
Twitter, Facebook probably are two of the biggest ones.
Yeah.
Instagram doesn't seem to get that political usually, but yeah, Twitter, Facebook for sure. Because we know that the social media accounts can determine what each individual is going to see. And from what I understand is the algorithm basically just feeds you more of what is going to make you pay attention longer, more of what you've maybe currently been looking at, more of what's going to draw you in, not necessarily anything with a certain, like they're not trying to like push a certain political agenda necessarily. At least that's what I hear about the algorithm, but they for sure could do that. Like they have the power to, if they wanted to, show people content on their Facebook and Twitter accounts that are
They
maybe more left leaning or more maybe more right leaning. And so, and everybody's on social media. So if let's say tomorrow Twitter and Facebook are like, you know what, we're gonna post things that are very influential or perhaps even manipulative that are going to lead people to want to vote left, right, center, wherever it is. They could do that if they wanted to. And what is going to motivate them to do that? There might be financial incentives. And like you're saying, it could be foreign actors. Maybe there's a incredible amount of money that's directed to these social media companies for them to lean a certain way politically, and wherever the money is, that's where things are going to go. And you hope so, but then you also hope that some of these people that are running the social media companies have a good moral compass and they're not going to fall prey to a fat stack of cash is gonna make them do some immoral things that's like
right.
bad for humanity.
Like
So Mark
that's
Zuckerberg, we're counting on our boy Mark
right,
to
right.
to
Yeah.
pull through.
But like that's the thing too, even with the best of intentions, it's like you can have the greatest intentions, but you might be steering it the wrong way. It's like
Yeah.
even with good intentions, the results of your actions or whatever you believe might be the wrong thing.
Hmm.
Or it's like it might do more harm than good. So it's like separating that, but also so it sort of comes back to that point of like having that transparency for these
Hmm.
social media like algorithms and what they're doing in the back end. Like I
Yeah.
think it's really important for us as like regular people or even as a society
Yeah.
that like there should be more transparency into what's really going on.
Right.
And like you say, if they really wanted to, they can steer ship in one direction or get these people to lean more this way if like, they want to. Even with like Google search engine, the search bar, we'll get like when we type something in, we'll all get different suggestions.
Right, right.
And based off those suggestions or based off the pages they show us. So if you ask like a topic like what is climate change? Is climate change real? What
Mhm.
is happening with the government? What is this?
Right,
It's Google, they decide what you get to see.
right.
So all of a sudden, Google, this big tech company that's apparently supposed to be just a search engine giving us information,
Yeah,
they have like an unprecedented amount of power
yeah.
over being able to sway people and how to think and
Right,
like to
right,
be able to control our concept of our reality or like the way people think.
right.
And it's like,
Yeah, I've
and
seen that like basically if you were searching in Google is climate change and that's all you typed in, it's going to come up with a number of suggestions. Is climate change a hoax? Is climate
right,
change happening tomorrow or whatever, like
right,
whatever things are you could possibly imagine could end that sentence. Google will give you a few of them, not all the possibilities, and the few that you do get is going to be dependent on, I think, where you live, like your location, and then also
right.
maybe what you previously have been looking at.
Like we would
I
probably, I'd imagine, get different results if we both did it
Yeah, for
on
sure.
Google. Like I imagine it's probably built off like your profile,
Yeah, so
right?
it's gonna, like if it's like some of the other social medias like Instagram and YouTube, it's gonna give you what you were looking at already.
Right. So part of it, what's gonna keep your attention, but also part
Yeah,
of it, perhaps like what they want you to see, or
it,
whatever.
right.
Like,
It honestly could be like I don't know enough about the algorithms, and I don't think they've disclosed them entirely. So
no,
is
they
it purely just, hey, we're gonna show you what you seem to already like, because that's gonna draw you in, and we as a company make money based on advertising. So the more you're on the app, the more you're gonna be looking at advertisements. So that's gonna increase our profits and all that stuff. Is it purely that, or are there some agendas behind the scene that they are not fully just curating our profiles based on that? They're also adding a touch of what they think, what they might want us to see, and maybe that's happening, maybe it's not. Here's a nice conspiracy theory that
well, I wouldn't be that surprised if it's happening to some extent.
yeah,
Like I'm pretty sure because there's lots of money to be made and there's big business to be made and be able to control public opinion or
yeah,
control what people think or how they think
right.
or how people feel.
I
Um,
think for sure a
it's
lot of the
big
social medias
business.
definitely lean a certain direction politically. Like Twitter and Facebook are a little bit more left leaning
Right.
than right. So it'll be far more common, I think, for accounts that tend to be right wing politically to get banned or kicked off the platform.
Right.
So that's one thing, a little different, the like getting booted off a platform
Because like that's
than
the
the
thing.
algorithm. But
Their concept of misinformation and disinformation
yeah,
coming from like the left or extreme left will be a completely different definition
right.
of misinformation, disinformation from someone who's just a conservative
Mm-hmm.
or someone in the center or
Right.
like far right. It's like everyone will have a different concept
Of
of
what
what
is
is.
true.
But
Uh,
like, but is there only one truth or is
yeah.
like,
That's
but
why I think that you just need you just need the freedom of speech and allow
exactly.
the better ideas to rise to the top, and don't filter things so much to try to push certain agendas, and just whatever people actually like, that'll rise up. Like for
Right.
Andrew Schultz comedy special, for example, a lot of people maybe don't like his some of the jokes he was saying,
Mm-hmm.
but it's popular enough that it's risen up to, like, I had so many people viewing it. And also, if you don't like it, just don't watch it. I mean, there's so many
Right.
things online. um I do get how it frustrates people to see certain comment that they think is hateful
Right.
go really far and get a lot of attention and get a lot of people jumping on that bandwagon. But at the same time, what is the alternative? If you start filtering people, I feel like that's worse off than just allowing the free speech to take place and allow the freedom of ideas to happen, and you can have debates online. You disagree with that, you agree with that, and I think that's a better alternative than some guy, Mark Zuckerberg or whoever, determining, well, that's unacceptable, that we shouldn't even allow that idea
Right.
to be here because that offended 100 people, or whatever it is.
Because then it's just speech approved by the powerful. So
Yeah,
whatever they decide is the truth is the quote unquote the truth. But like we've tried, like
the
that's
truth,
been
or even just what's offensive and what's like it might.
right. But we'll all hear things like whether it's true or not, like we'll all experience or hear things that we don't like to hear, or like that might hurt your feelings.
Yeah,
Or it's like, but just because it hurts your feelings or you don't like hearing it
right,
doesn't mean that person shouldn't be allowed to say it.
right.
So it's like if someone says something that's like that I very much dislike, very much disagree with, or even like insults me or whatever, it's like
Hmm.
sure, like I won't like it won't be happy with it or won't
Yeah,
like it, but I still respect that person's right to be able to do so.
right.
So like people should have the freedom to like the freedom of speech
Yeah.
and like responsibility for their actions, but as soon as you start getting in the territory of like all right, we're going to try to control it when it's been tried in the past is what happens. If you have to appoint like people in power, they have to make those decisions,
Yeah,
and eventually that's an unprecedented like amount of power.
yeah.
They get to decide what gets said and what doesn't, and like
It, yeah, it's so much responsibility. Um,
yeah.
and it's an impossible task to do properly. Like you can't ever know what's right, and you also got
Right.
to allow people to change their mind, and that's one another thing about social media is everything you post can now be locked into
The
the platform.
ethersphere
You,
of like the metaverse or
yeah, you take a
forever.
screenshot and now it exists in
The
the
data
on the internet forever.
centers, yeah, and data centers wherever.
And so you'll get people saying things on Twitter 15 years ago, and now they can clearly be like, "Oh, I wish I didn't say that. I don't even agree with that anymore."
Right.
Like people evolve as human beings. I mean, one of the greatest things that used to be promoted like a lot is forgiveness, but
Right.
now it's like, well, no, you're never allowed to come back because I took that screenshot of what you did 15 years ago,
100%.
or I have that video of what you did. And yes, there's an accountability thing of you may have you did that thing, you should apologize or whatever, but
Right.
also it's like you need to allow people
Right.
to recover, and
There needs to
allow
be
them
a
to.
road to redemption for
Yeah,
even for like stupid statuses. Like
yeah,
if there's road to redemptions for people or like criminals or people that break the law, there's road to redemptions for these people.
for
There
sure.
needs to be road to redemptions for people that say stupid things on Twitter 10 years ago,
Right.
or like but at the end of the day, like we're all humans.
Yeah.
Like we all make mistakes. I've made tons of mistakes, and it's like being able to like learn and grow from your mistakes and being able to have the potential or the opportunity to fail
Mhm.
is very important, because like it's through failures, it's through making
Yeah.
mistakes that you're able to grow or learn or become a better person.
Right.
And it's like if you never fail in life, I don't like you probably won't ever become the best version of yourself,
Right.
because you're not like you're not trying to, you know,
And yeah, and if the society is so set up and social media is so set up to criticize you and never forgive you if you ever make a mistake, now you get people being so scared of trying to put their ideas out there. And I feel like it's better to be able to voice your opinion, even if you're like you're worried about the criticism,
right,
because especially if you're at least willing to have a genuine conversation about
right.
it and hear the other
Like
side.
maybe I'm wrong, but this is
Yeah,
what I think.
but it's
Like
not, maybe I'm wrong, so I'm gonna not say this because I'm so afraid of what the backlash is gonna be.
exactly.
But then what you end up getting is maybe you now have a person who never would have, they don't change their mind ever, because had they said what they wanted to say and then they have a genuine conversation with somebody else, now they're like, oh, okay, I see what you're saying, and you're
Right.
right, that was kind of a weird thing I was thinking. But if they're just like, oh shit, I don't want to ever say this, or I'm only gonna say it in the people that agree with me, because I know if I say it around the people that disagree with me, they're gonna shoot me down and want to banish me from society. That I feel like is a pretty toxic environment.
For sure. But maybe what that person was gonna say too was gonna help everyone
Yeah,
or create
yeah.
the environment a much better place, or it was gonna help whatever that person they were saying it to. Or
Hmm.
it's like, so having the feeling of like not being able to share exactly what you're thinking or feeling,
Right.
which it seems sort of like it's a common theme sort of like these days here in Canada
Hmm.
or like Western societies.
It's
Like it's
it's
it's dangerous for society as a whole,
yeah.
not just for the individuals that it hurts in the time, but also like keep in mind what that person was gonna say. It might be stupid or wrong or silly or whatever,
Hmm.
but like you say, it's just being able to have the freedom or have feel comfortable like to make mistakes,
Right.
to say the wrong thing. Like
It yeah. It's you need to be feel comfortable, like you're saying, to say the wrong thing, or potentially make a mistake, because I feel like it's also it's toxic that you might have an environment that's just gonna never forgive you and criticize you till the end of time for saying something. But it's also toxic for your own personal psychology, I feel like, to be thinking, oh, only some of the ideas that I have are acceptable to be able to be expressed. Like that's a form of shame about your own ideas.
right,
And like it also creates a far better dynamic pod, like for podcasting, for example, when both people are not worried about saying the wrong thing, because I'm not going to be like, as if you said that, like that's it, we're done. Like
right,
it's like, okay, well, why do you think that? Like let's examine that a little bit more, and then I can change my mind, you can change your mind. Like nobody's flawless, and I think it's really beneficial to create that type of environment just for like your own personal psychology. Like if you're ashamed of admitting certain things, like if I say, oh, I'm not feeling good today, I'm feeling kind of depressed, or I'm feeling whatever it is, if I'm afraid of saying certain things, what that basically means is that there's a level of shame. And so now you no longer have the thing you don't want to say, but now you have a shame. And the same thing could be true on social media of like, I don't want to express my opinion, or they don't want to hear it. And yeah, now there's like an added level of shame in there, if that makes
right.
sense. Like,
No, but you're absolutely right. It's not good for like the individual. Like it's
mm,
not healthy too. Like holding,
yeah.
like, just bottling in or holding in like what you're like thinking or feeling, not being able to express yourself. Because like
Mm,
self-expression or just expressing
yeah.
like whatever it is you're feeling or thinking, like it's important like
Yeah.
as an individual for humans, but also like as a society at whole.
Mm,
Like we need people to like we need the, even like those like the crazy people, they're the ones that innovate,
mm,
like the Isaac Newtons, the one that like, you know,
yeah.
that like that go off into like these things that sound like
Yeah.
crazy or whatever.
It's
But
yeah, it's like too far fetched, or too like out of what people are typically thinking,
right.
that they just want to deny it.
Or it goes against the system of beliefs at the time.
Yeah.
Like
I also think for a learning environment, it's terrible to have people feel so ashamed of saying certain things or making a mistake, because they're so afraid of getting shut down. If you ever go to like a classroom that has a great learning environment, you're probably very likely to hear the teacher or the professor be like, questions are good, no dumb questions, like just
right,
let me know, I want to hear your questions, don't be afraid of asking certain things, because it's okay, we're not going to shoot you down, like we're not going to laugh at you and make fun of you if you ask a dumb question. um at least that's ideally what happens. But I think it's the same way, like let's say you're trying to mentor somebody, or teach somebody at your work, or whatever, and every time they ask you a question, they're like, are you serious, you don't know that, or like, you
right,
really thought that? They're next time going to be so much more hesitant to ask something or to speak up, because they're like, oh god, I got to be careful, last time he really criticized me when I asked something or I said something and he said it was stupid. So now all of a sudden you're filtering yourself. You have probably more anxiety and you're like, what's right? What am I? What should I say? Maybe I shouldn't say that. It's just like way more toxic. So we know that's a better learning environment for it's a better learning environment. It's better for people's personal psychology, and it's probably better also just for society at large to feel a little bit more freedom and there's a little bit more forgiveness. But I think in order for that to happen, you also need to have like the long form conversations which are a little bit more complex. It's more effort, right? Like to really understand somebody and get the perspective. It's way easier to just be like, oh, that was stupid, I don't even want to talk to you.
Right.
It's way harder to be like, oh, that kind of offends me, that like hurts, I agree with what you're saying, but let's talk about this and let's sort out the details and let me see where you're coming from. That takes way more effort and it's way harder, which I think is why people don't do it as much.
Right. And
Because
it requires humility also.
mm-hmm,
And like you say, it's a lot more difficult. Like it takes time to do that, but learning the whole like a big part of the learning process requires failures or mistakes.
mm-hmm,
And it's like for myself, like some of the like greatest lessons in life that I've learned or the greatest things that I've came to understand is through making mistakes and through failures. And
right,
it's not things I learned like in books,
mm-hmm,
or it's like things that like the way I was thinking about things was wrong,
right,
or the way like I saw myself, or I saw like the way the world
right,
was wrong, and I had to like adjust and accepting, being able to accept that, like at first, like, oh, like it hurts, like it sucks,
mm-hmm,
but that's where you're able to grow, and you're
right,
able to, okay, like once you get honest with yourself, like that's where you're able to figure out what's really going on, and
mm-hmm,
that's where you're able to grow from. And you're not it's hard to be honest with other people if you're not able even to be honest with yourself. And
yeah,
it's so getting honest with yourself is very important, and then that allows you
mm-hmm,
um to sort
yeah,
of just like it's a good foundation if you want to grow as a
yeah.
person, but like learning too.
I feel like, yeah, like you're saying, be honest with yourself and also do what we've been saying, even with yourself, because I you can almost act like that critical person, but within your own mind, where you think of something and you're like, "Oh God, I can't believe I even thought about that,"
Right.
and you feel shame and you're like attack. You're
Like
like,
almost
"Don't
too
think
hard,
that."
like having that self-criticism, it's good,
Yeah,
but you don't want to be like too hard on yourself either,
right.
because there could be that negative aspects
Hmm.
where if you're too hard on yourself, or if your inner
Yeah,
voice, it's like constantly negative.
yeah,
um but like that's the thing too, so it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because being critical, like, or overly critical, or however you want to discuss it, it allows people, or like even like for myself at times, to push myself to be better.
yeah,
Or it's like if you want to be at the top of like athletics, at the top of this, at the top of that, like you need to be critical like for
right.
yourself. But it's a bit of a balancing act, because you don't want to be like mean to yourself, or
Yeah,
like too hard, or like overthinking things that are out of your control, or
right,
overthinking things that like are unnecessary.
right.
Like say like, oh, like I had a conversation with someone, and you're like the other day or whatever, and then like 2 days later you're thinking like, oh, like I made this comment, it was like silly, or like I felt awkward, or you're overthinking, you're thinking about things that, like, first of all, that person might have not even like noticed.
Hmm.
It's not going to help you. It's just you're
Right,
just being overly hard on yourself. So being able to understand, like,
yeah,
differentiate like a healthy form of criticism,
right,
being able to differentiate that from like being overly critical
right,
to a point where it's has negative impact.
right.
And it's sort of like it's a tough
Yeah,
balancing act to be able to figure out what that is.
right. You want to be
And
you don't want to just never be satisfied and always feel like you're not good enough and you always need to do more. I feel
Exactly.
like the way you talk to yourself mentally can all often be it gets projected out into the world. Like let's say you're extremely critical of yourself, like you want your look to look a certain way, you want the way you dress, the way you think, you're just like criticizing yourself to no end. I feel like if that is the mentality you have, that'll likely translate out into the world too. So if you see other people and you'll be critical of them because you're so
Right.
critical of yourself. And I think as you start to become more accepting of yourself, and perhaps you start to like deconstruct this identity that you feel like you need to be, like you feel like you need to be this way, you feel like you need to look this way, you feel like you need to be doing these certain things. As you start to let go of that a little bit, maybe you're a little less critical of people out in the world as well.
Right.
um
Less judgmental also.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I really liked what you were saying before too. um just about how, yeah, you need to make mistakes, and like a lot of your biggest learning opportunities come through that. Um, yeah, and I was wondering, why do you think it is that people are often, it seems like they want to hold people down to where they used to be. Like let's say like in the past I had behaved a certain way or I'd made these certain mistakes. Some people seem to want to cling on to that, and they're like, this is who you are. Oh, you're the person who did this, and they don't want to let go of it too easily. um and that's the way it kind of is, like we were saying with social media, we're like, oh no, you said that 10 years ago, that's who you are. And you're like, no, no, I changed, I do this differently, I'm not like
Right.
that anymore. But they're go, you're not getting away. But it's like there's some motivation that people have
Like
to
personal
want to be like, you're still like to
that other people have, or you mean like you yourself, like you don't wanna, like you still see yourself in that way, or
maybe a
like,
little bit of that, but I was also thinking about just like it can seem like other people want you to stay the way you were. You know
okay,
what I mean? Like just like how they might criticize a celebrity and say, "No, no, you're like this," and they may never forgive you. There's a reason that they want to do that. I'm just wondering what that reason is. Like why they want to hold that celebrity to make it so they can never escape from their mistake in the past. And I think there's not everybody does that, but there's definitely people doing that, and I'm curious what that reasoning might be. Why people like wanna not allow you to grow.
well, it's a great way like to escape your own problems or not have to deal with what's wrong in your life or improve yourself,
Hmm.
to point out or to look at what's wrong with other people, or to
Right,
look at other people's lives or follow these celebrities and
right,
look
right.
what they did wrong and
It's
look
like the
what this
crabs in
and
a
how
bucket
could he
thing.
have said this, and it's um like sure, like holding people accountable if they done something wrong, there's
Yeah,
like there's
that.
validity to that,
Yeah.
but also like but I think before you go pointing fingers or looking at especially people online or all these things, it's like judging other people, it's like it's important to be able to look at yourself, and it's like,
Right.
are you, if you're doing it so much, it's like, are you maybe escaping, is it a form of escape, or like you, like because if
Right.
you're constantly looking at other people or whatever, you don't have to deal with your like the
Mm-hmm.
problems in your life. So
Right.
imagine for
Right.
a lot of people it's like a form of escape.
Right.
And
Yeah, and it's so much easier to criticize other people, and I think every time we see other people doing stuff, like it we go into like auto comparison mode, kind of.
right.
Like I was actually walking through the Bayshore shopping mall yesterday, and I was walking by a bunch of advertisements, and like of course like on their advertisements they're gonna be like people dressed really nice. There's like people that are really fit. There was an advertisement I remember seeing of it was George Clooney. I think he was holding up like some cologne or something, but he's looking really nice. Like
Oh, for sure,
he's
yeah.
like he's looking
Like David Beckham
it,
poster, like all those sorts of
exact
things.
exactly. And
Yeah.
obviously the reason that advertisers are going to use those type of photos is because it it appeals to our auto comparison, I think, of as soon as I see that, I start to compare what he's looking like in that photo with how what I'm doing. And it doesn't necessarily need to be look to look. It could be like lifestyle to lifestyle. Oh, I see him dressed in a nice suit. He I assume certain things about that photo. I'm not
Right.
just physically seeing the colors and the lines in the
Like high
photo.
status, like lots of
Exactly.
money.
And
Um,
that's literally the reason why advertisements work is because it taps into that comparing nature that people have is when they look at the ad, they're going to feel a certain way, and for the sake of consumerism and for the sake of us buying that product, it'll
right.
work better if the people looking at that ad feel lesser and they feel like they're missing something, and then they look at that ad and be like, this ad is they might not consciously realize it, but that ad is making them feel a little bit lesser.
For
And
sure.
then they start thinking, well, how could I feel equal or
Right.
better? Oh,
But if
maybe
you
if
get
I
that,
have the thing that he has in
yeah,
that
the
ad.
watch or like the suit jacket or whatever,
Yeah,
it'll
exactly.
help bring those sorts of things that you feel like you're lacking compared to that person, George Clooney or whatever.
Right. And it's
It's
that.
like like what regular person's like realistically gonna be competing with George Clooney
Yeah,
or like
it's like
those
a
David Beckhams or this and that.
it's an unfair comparison, but I think maybe the problem itself is the fact that we do that auto comparison, and maybe there's like trying to get out of that mentality and like trying to become aware that, oh, I'm starting to compare, and that's really the root of the problem. Because whether it's George Clooney, maybe that's like, of course we can't be on his level, but we're not necessarily we're going to see photos of other people doing all sorts of stuff. Maybe it's not directly an advertisement, but when you're scrolling on Instagram, you're going to see certain lifestyles, and maybe it's yeah, it's not an advertisement, but it could be somebody holding up cologne just like George Clooney was. They're not intentionally doing an advertisement, but they're just doing their thing, and I'll feel that same certain way.
Well,
And
we're
so I
very like comparative like in nature.
mhm,
It's very like a basic human instinct to constantly be comparing yourself to other people. And this is sort of like how we evolved as humans, like
yeah.
in tribes, and there's always been like this form of like status and like
Mhm,
different classes and stuff. And like the reason why people sort of compare themselves is you're constantly trying to compare yourself to figure out where you are within your tribe or your family or this or
right.
like because like to human beings like it's sort of important to have sort of like climb that,
Right.
like it's been like a basic like survival instinct,
Mhm.
like it
It
goes deep into like our human biology
yeah,
almost.
it's so deep, but I think it also it causes what we were talking about before of how people will be not want they'll want to like stunt your growth or hold you down to where you were before, because I think there is that auto comparison of, well, if they're starting to do things better, it might make you feel worse and it's easier to criticize. Like for me,
Oh,
for
okay.
example, when I'm walking past that George Clooney ad, it'd be easier for me to just be like, well, because I might start to feel lesser because I'm looking at that ad, but I can do one of two things, or there's probably a few options. I could maybe buy the product and then hope that I'm gonna feel better, or I could be like, well, no, actually, he's actually stupid because, and you know what I mean? It's
Right.
like you can start to criticize him and be like, well,
Right.
no, he that last movie was dumb. I don't even want that anyway. No,
Just tear
eh,
him down, make him look less
exactly.
like, yeah.
So it's like,
Or just take the poster down, just
yeah, I just
just
rip
like
it to
no one's
pieces.
looking, yeah. But
So, but yeah, it's the social media is basically that, just constantly, because you're gonna see certain things, and because like we're saying, it runs so deep to have that auto comparison nature. It's gonna happen whether it's an actual ad or if it's just somebody's YouTube video, or it's their YouTube or their Instagram post,
right.
and yeah, I mean, this might be getting kind of like spiritual, but like I was thinking about that of like, well, what's the solution then? Because you you're gonna have this tendency to compare over and over. Um, but what you're doing is you're comparing the identity that you've constructed of yourself. Like everything that I have or everything that I do is gonna group together to create an identity, and it's gonna be extremely complex. Like I might have my identity somewhat based on the things that I have, like my clothes, my car, my house. But it might also be based on some of the things that I do or have done. Like maybe I'm working at a certain place. Maybe I went to
Right.
this school.
Your
Um, my
relationships, like your
relationships,
work.
my friends,
Right.
all this stuff is going to accumulate into a certain identity. Um,
And that's like the way you view yourself,
yeah,
like yourself.
and then it gets even more complicated because that identity that I believe that makes me, like, this is the identity that I call I, like, this is me, this is myself,
Right.
this is a
When you say the word I, that's
yeah,
what you think of. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, who am I? And then you start to
Right.
think about all these things that aren't necessarily who you actually are. They're just a combination of what you've done in the past, what you own. These things aren't actually who you are. Like, is
Right.
that really who you are, or is that just who the identity that you've built? And I think in psychology they call that the ego. This is like what you've built. This is who I am, and that identity that you've built is then going to be constantly compared against other certain things. So
Right.
when I see George Clooney, if I have a crazy big ego, maybe I actually look at him and be like, whatever, like
Yeah. I could
or
have gotten that movie too, like no problem. Or
yeah. And so I wonder if the real solution is to deconstruct the ego, deconstruct the identity that you've formulated of
like
yourself,
built up.
and come back to who you really are, which is maybe just pure consciousness. And this is what I was saying, and maybe we're gonna get like super spiritual about this, but it's just like that. It, well, yeah, it's not really who you are. Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
Right. Because everyone will have a different, I like, will view you differently.
yeah,
Like, because they'll have like the same experiences like alongside you, perhaps,
mm,
but they'll have different perspectives. So you might like go away from experience thinking like, oh, I messed this up. But the person's like, oh, look,
right,
Ollie was like, look how giving, look how nice he was to that
mm,
person. So like that's like your self-constructed identity, like the I ego of yourself.
mm,
Like you're saying, it isn't exactly your true self,
no,
but like
it's some sort of illusionary construction that you've built up in your mind. Really though,
and
like,
is it's constantly changing
it's
too.
constantly changing.
Like,
It's like your perception multiplied by the things that you've done and the things that you've have.
but is that the ego itself? You think that I, that self-constructed I, built off like all your experience and your inner identity and all that, that's the ego, or is that
I
separate from like, or does
so
ego fuel that? Are those two
yeah,
separate? That's what
I
I'm not
don't
sure.
yeah, I'm not sure either, to be honest. Like, I know the ego is like a psychological term, and maybe that is, we're right on the money with it, and that is what you would call the ego, but maybe the
Yeah.
ego is something slightly different. But either way, I think it's fair to say this is an identity, whether that's the same as what in the psychology textbook they call the ego. I don't know, but for sure you're constructing a certain identity of yourself, and I think that identity is what causes problems with comparison a lot of the time. Um, and so I'd imagine if, let's say, you were able to like not, you were able to deconstruct that identity, because a lot of the aspects of that identity probably give you a little bit of satisfaction. If you identify yourself as, oh, I'm this person who dresses well, I'm this person who went to this college, I'm this person who went to this place, I do this, I'm good at this sport, whatever it is that's going to add to your identity, that each one of those things can give you a little sense of satisfaction or dissatisfaction. Um, but it's fleeting though. It doesn't last forever. Like, let's say you went to certain, you achieved something, or you got a nice shirt. That's not going to last forever. It's constantly changing and going up and down. And I don't know, that maybe is a rabbit hole that that whole thing is something to think about and explore a little
Yeah.
further. But
It's super
I,
complex because like when I think about it, it's like even if you wanted to like in theory like deconstruct that ego or that identity,
mhm,
it's like I'm not sure you'd even be able to do that. It's like you like sure like with psychedelics you can lose touch or
mhm,
whatever of like the ego, or it can get like squashed down, or you realize like in perspective of the universe,
Yeah.
of like this idea we have of ourselves. Like when you look up at the stars and you realize like how we're just like a
Mm-hmm.
speck of dust, or we're technically made of stardust, and it's like
Yeah.
all these constructs and social constructs we're talking about are all created from us, but it's not like necessarily universal, or
Right.
it's not like, you know. So trying to like us, like me as a human now, if I wanted to, whatever ego or sense of I have,
Mm-hmm.
if I wanted to say sort of deconstruct or deflate or get rid of that, I'm not sure no matter what I do, I'd be able to do that. But I
Mm-hmm.
think one thing that I can do is being able to shift my perspective or like mentality on different things.
Right.
And I think perspective is key on like a lot of things. And it's
Right.
like the way you view things has a major impact on like how you carry yourself, or how
Right. Right.
even your
Right.
feeling, or like how you go about in life. It's
Right.
like a different perspective can have huge behavioral like changes.
Right.
Like if you change the proper perspective, you can start developing goals and long-term this, and like have a
Right.
dream, and like future, like want a family, and like
Right.
being able to build these things for like the future of your family, and like
Right.
have that discipline to do all
Mm-hmm.
these. But
Yeah.
like that perspective, it's what gives that.
Mm-hmm.
But attaining that perspective, it's so much easier said than done.
For sure.
It's like how
And I feel like
like
each of these like little advertisements, they come in and maybe influence our perspective in a lot of ways. Like you're saying, maybe you can't deconstruct your identity, and maybe that wouldn't necessarily be a good thing. Um, but if our identity is based on the things we have, the things we do, the things we have done, in combination with our perspective of the things we have, the things we've done, and the things we are doing, there's the perspective component. Um, if our perspective is good of all of that, then maybe we have a higher self esteem. And if our perspective is bad about all that, then we have a lower
right.
self esteem. But I think our perspective is going to change, and it'll be influenced by the outsider things that we pick up on. So like let's say I'm just surrounded by George Clooney ads all the time, or like
Right.
George Clooney or David Beckham, or just like all sorts of rich
Like
famous people.
George Clooney pedestrians all along the sidewalk. You're
Right,
just
yeah, yeah.
walking through them.
You're just surrounded by a world of
Yeah,
like
bro,
Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio
yeah,
just everywhere. And it's just like that will have an influence on your perspective of what you've done, what you're wearing, what all that stuff. So I think all in all, it's probably just beneficial to be mindful of what is really happening here. Like what is happening when I see this advertisement of George Clooney, and rather than just see it and then you feel bad, and a lot of it's like unconscious, maybe you don't even realize that that ad had an influence on you.
right.
I think to become aware of all that is beneficial, because now when I see the ad, I might be like, oh, I see what's happening. It's that like auto comparison. I'm like comparing my perception of who I am with who I think he is in that ad.
You're able to
And
acknowledge it, not like try to hide or stop the thought from coming in, but you
yeah,
just like sort of acknowledge it, view the thought for what it is, and you sort of just like let it pass. And
right.
like
And then also to recognize what is it that, like, let's say you realize you're comparing with him. What is it that you think you are? Like where, like, you're comparing, are you saying you're better? Are you saying you're worse? Are you saying, but in order to see the full side of the comparison, you have to think about, what is it that I think about, what is it that I'm thinking about him? Am I thinking, oh wow, he's so amazing, he's this, he's that? Okay, sure. And what is it that you're thinking about yourself? Because then you have a full comparison. You have two things. You've created an identity of what you think you are, and then you've created an identity of what you think he is. But what are each of them? And maybe you're not being fair to yourself, and um, maybe you're clinging on to things that are not, like, that's what I was saying more about the deconstruction of the identity, is maybe you're clinging on to things that are not really you. You're thinking, oh God, I'm not great. I don't have a nice suit like him. He has a nice car in the background. And
right.
it's like let's say you did have that nice car and that nice suit and then the nice whatever else he has, that's still not really you. You know what I mean? It's just
Right.
you just now have the things, and maybe now your identity or your ego is bigger now because you have the car, you have all that stuff, you have all these things, and your identity's bigger, but it maybe is not the solution.
It's
But
also important to note that like you can view all these nice things or in the poster it looks nice. There's all these like nice car, nice suit, nice things.
mm-hmm,
But it doesn't mean that his life is great or his life is nice.
mm-hmm,
Or it could be like having difficulties like at home or whatever. So not everything is necessarily as it seems.
right,
So it's easy to think like you look at Instagram and you start comparing yourself to different people like oh they have like they just got a brand new car, they go on vacation like every
yeah,
week, Tulum and all these
mm-hmm,
places, and it's like compare your life to that and you think like oh like look how great they're doing like
mm-hmm,
and like look where I'm at, but then you don't know that their
yeah.
life is like better or worse,
No, you
and
don't
it's like people only share the best aspects of their
on social
lives,
media, yeah.
and it's like
Well, I also think a lot of that comparison happens unconsciously. Like we don't even realize how we are being influenced by what we see online and what we see when we're walking by advertisements in the store. Like there was George Clooney there, but there was also a lot of like there's like lingerie shops, there's like other stores, so there's like girls in bikinis and like
right.
uh really good looking people like all over the place or whatever, and all these things are going to have an influence on you. But I'm sure like at the lingerie shop there's like girls that are looking a certain way, and then there's women walking through Bayshore Mall and they're seeing these ads, but they might not likely be thinking, okay, I see what's going on
Right.
here, that ad's making me feel like this, and
The
that's what
majority of people don't look like that, or it's
they're
like
yeah, they might not even think too much about it at all. They just see it and they maybe feel a little worse, but they don't even realize what happened. It's just like
right,
these ads are having an influence on your psychology all the
like
time.
subconscious.
Yeah, it's for the most part
It's the
just
same with like a lot of those videos, like like if you go on Facebook and you get caught in that like scrolling through videos,
yeah,
it's like subconsciously you don't know how bad it can be, like raise stress levels,
right.
like increase this or like do
Mhm.
this. It's like not good, and like you say, you might not be aware
Yeah.
exactly of like what's happening like behind like in your mind with like
You could finish scrolling for 10 minutes and then you feel like garbage, but you don't
right.
exactly know why. You're
And you're
like,
not in control of that. You're
yeah.
not like because the brain's so complicated. It's not like like you said before about like the things you put into your body, the content you absorb. It
Mhm.
has like such a big impact on not just
Yeah.
your physical health, but like the health of your mind.
Right.
And
Yeah, and all in all, like maybe to come full circle on that is like we were saying, what kind of input is social media, because it obviously is an input, just like
right,
seeing an advertisement's an input. The stimulation of the input of social media is perhaps a lot more powerful because it can be pictures worth 1,000 words, and then a video's worth like a
a
thousand pictures,
million,
yeah, a million,
a million and a half or
a
something.
million pictures, so it's like
Right.
so much is coming at you. There's probably no way to be conscious of how every little video and every picture is affecting your mind, but it all is affecting your mind, and I think it's really going to vary from, like, social media is so general, right? Like you could be on Instagram, you could be on Twitter, you could be on Facebook, you could be on YouTube, and then if you're on YouTube, you could be watching videos about cats, you could be watching videos about,
Dogs.
yeah, the Great Reset or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's hard to say social media is a negative input, but just as a whole, it's too big of a thing.
Right.
But I think just to be mindful of that, like if there's any takeaways potentially, it's just try to think of social media like that is how, what kind of input is it for you,
Right.
and maybe certain parts of social media are good inputs for you, and maybe parts of social media are bad inputs. Just trying to be aware of, why do I find this addicting? understanding maybe the algorithms and why that makes sense that it would addict humans or pull them in.
And be aware of like how it impacts your life.
Yeah.
So like if you notice that like it's affecting your stress levels, or the more you use social media, or the more you check Facebook, the more you check Instagram, the
Mm-hmm.
worse your mood becomes, or
Right.
like the less work you get done like at
Mm-hmm.
work or at school.
Mm-hmm.
Like to be aware of those things, of how it impacts you, and be able to adjust like
Right.
accordingly. So like if maybe you need like to take breaks from social media,
Yeah.
I think it's definitely a positive thing.
Yeah. And
And
it could be definitely like obviously people are addicted to social media because it does provide us with that stimulus. So it's a challenging thing for sure. Um, to jump away from it. But I think yeah, like we're saying, the awareness of what's actually happening, awareness of why are the algorithms the way they are, and maybe we never know exactly what they are unless we work
yeah,
at the company. But it's like yeah, just becoming more aware of why you're getting pulled in those directions,
right.
why you're getting upset when you view that type of content, and also just yeah, I mean, it's a huge thing. Social media, it's
Right.
massive. It's only gonna get bigger too, really. Like,
Yeah.
so
Like
yeah,
the future of it, like where do you see the future of social media going? Like you think, you ever heard of like the
the metaverse. Yeah,
metaverse,
this maybe this
and like
conversation's in the metaverse right now.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
we might be in a
Th-
simulation right now.
yeah. Right now we're in the metaverse and we're just playing the old fashioned podcast game.
Right.
That's what we clicked on.
I don't know if you remember, did you watch Lex Friedman's podcast with Mark Zuckerberg?
Yeah, yeah.
The first question that Lex asked Mark Zuckerberg, it was funny. It was like, so first question, he was like, so is it possible that we're a few years into the future and right now we're sitting in a meta simulation
Mm-hmm.
and you're an avatar and I'm asking you,
Right.
and then Mark Zuckerberg, he's like he's like super like, he's like finds it funny, like amusing. He's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
well, I don't know, it's possible.
yeah, yeah.
It's like
Yeah, he
I
was.
hope not.
Yeah, and then Lex was like maybe 40 years from now, or he said some number, and then Mark Zuckerberg was like, "Oh no, it's gonna happen way quicker than that." Like
Right.
the real life avatars. Right now we have those like bit emojis or whatever it is that like on certain apps you can create like a little avatar for yourself. But he's saying soon we're gonna have realistic avatars
Yeah.
that we could put virtual reality goggles on, and I can just see your real life avatar,
Yeah.
and that stuff's crazy. Like I don't even know. That stuff's kind of like scary in some ways, just because the technology is advancing so fast.
Yeah.
And then you gotta worry: is the technology gonna advance faster than our ethics and our understanding of the technology? Like you might,
Probably.
it probably will.
It
Yeah.
probably
So it's
will.
gonna go. It's going way faster than.
It could be like in the next like 2 years, and that's the thing. It's starting like with those goggles,
Hmm.
and it's like sure you can put like what is it, like a TV on your face,
Yeah.
but like are you really in the metaverse? It's like,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? But
Also, like, you know how social media already, it's like it's really going up, it's like a fight for our willpower and our self-control to overpower social media sometimes.
yeah,
Eventually there might be technologies that are so appealing and so stimulating that our self-control and willpower just completely loses the battle, and we're just like, I can't help it, it's just too good.
that's a serious concern, I think, for like the metaverse and sort of like these augmented reality, whether you say video games, but they're also trying to bring it. So the concept of the metaverse is not just like this virtual reality you go into.
Hmm.
When you hear Mark Zuckerberg talk about it, he talks about it being so like the world we're in now, they're trying to make this world the metaverse.
Right.
So have like it's a combination of like the real reality
Hmm.
that we live in mixed in with like augmented like reality. So you put like glasses on and you can see like someone could be there
Right.
in the room with you,
That's
or
wild.
you
Yeah.
can like, which is kind of cool, but
Hmm.
also it also brings us down a path which is like very concerning, very frightening, I think.
I feel like if that was the case, there'd be like way more outbreaks of people like just losing their mind because you start to think, what am I see? What is real? What is not real?
That's
Because you're
right
literally wearing
too.
glasses where you're seeing stuff that aren't real, and then you could take it off, and then let's say you see something weird, you'd be like, "Are my glasses on?" Or like,
Right.
let's say it's not
It's like
glasses.
vertigo, but like reality vertigo almost.
Yeah,
Like you almost like lose touch with
what is
like
real?
what
What's
is
not
but
real?
like even reality, we barely have a like a hold of what is reality
Yeah.
or like consciousness.
Oh
We
yeah, we have no
barely even
idea
know what consciousness is or where like
where it comes
really
from.
comes from. So like if we're not able to figure that out and they're already trying to um copy what our brain is doing and what our
Yeah.
eyes are doing and bring that into like reality.
Yeah, Mark is wild. Yeah, he's a wild boy, that guy.
Yeah.
Like I remember hearing him talk about on the podcast with Lex. He's like, eventually people are gonna spend more money in the metaverse on their metaverse clothing for their avatar than they would for their real clothing because
Right.
he's like, why wouldn't you? You're gonna
Yeah.
spend more time in the metaverse. So if I'm gonna spend $50 on these jeans in real life, but I'm spending most of my time
Exactly.
in the metaverse, why not spend that money on the jeans? And I was thinking though, I was like, difference though is that there's only a certain amount of resources to make jeans in the real world, whereas the metaverse, it's a computer simulation,
Yeah.
right? So you can
But
just,
it's not real either.
but you
That's
can
the
make
problem.
unlimited jeans. So why spend 50?
Ex-
Why spend $50 on something that it has unlimited? You can just
right.
make a new one for, like, all you have to do is click
For
whoever's
your
fucking,
avatar, for your character.
yeah,
Yeah,
whoever's
that's a
like
good point. Because all you
Mark,
need to do is program it. Technically,
yeah,
it's like computer
Mark's
code.
up there like the master programmer,
Right.
and he's like, let's just add 10 more jeans, and
Right.
he's just like,
Raise
it's
the
just a
price a
couple of
little
clicks of
bit.
a button,
Yeah.
or probably it won't even be clicks of a button. Just the computers are just take over entirely.
But it's sort of concerning when he says that seriously. Like, why wouldn't you spend more money on your digital avatar than you
Yeah,
would on your real self if
right.
the majority of like our life or our time are spent in the digital world or in the metaverse? And it's like technically, logically, he has a point,
Yeah,
but it's also like, well, hold on, like I'll tell you why. It's because that thing's not real. We are. Like
yeah.
this is real. You got to take care of your body.
Mm-hmm.
Like real life is real and it's important. And
Right,
that's why you shouldn't be spending more money on a digital world
right,
because it's like it's almost that simple because it's not real.
right.
But there's also
I wonder if Mark would say that. Well, we'll get to the point where he's like, he might say like, what is real, right? Because
right
it's
because
like,
then you get to that it's philosophical. It becomes
yeah,
philosophical.
because like
And how do you and like it's
your
tough to debate
dreams,
that
your
because we haven't figured out what reality is yet
right,
completely. Well,
like your dreams, for example, you might be dreaming about all this bizarre stuff that one day it could be a similar thing in the metaverse. Like you might be dreaming of dragons and like goblins and all sorts of like crazy shit that isn't technically in what we'd call reality, but and then his metaverse might have all that same stuff. It could have the same like fantasy
right,
whatever.
you can fly or
Yeah,
whatever.
you can fly or do whatever you want, but it's like, aren't dreams real though? Like it's like,
Right.
isn't just reality is just whatever we are perceiving? Like we technically could be in a simulation right now, so none of this is actually
We're in the Matrix probably.
because if Mark's saying that eventually we will get to the point where there's photorealistic avatars and metaverse feels very, very real, and that he said is less than 40 years from now, what happens in 100 years? In 100 years, I feel like they'll be able to connect you to something that maybe feels exactly the same as reality, but technically it's not.
But
And so it's like,
yeah.
is reality just whatever you're experiencing? Like in a dream, you're experiencing something. So yeah, it's like who knows what what is reality is maybe
Yeah.
a
But
too big of a
also
question.
a large part of like our reality is made up of like the chemical interactions in the
Right,
brain. So it's like chemical processes.
right,
So
right.
is it like our that those chemical interactions making up our reality, or is it reality just is without like what's the difference between those like the chemical process of like making like or interpreting our reality and reality as is?
Right.
So it's like are those two different things? Are they one and the same? Or is it
Yeah, like
Like I don't know.
maybe
You know?
eventually, like, well, there's like the Neuralink thing that Elon Musk
Oh
and his team
yeah.
is working on. Like, that stuff gets scary too because
Yeah,
maybe they
even
get to
more
the
so.
point where, like you're saying, how you're feeling and how you're perceiving the world is dependent on the neurotransmitters and molecules and all sorts of complex things that I can't dive too deeply in.
Right.
But I know that the Neuralink is going to be able to stimulate areas of your brain, and maybe they eventually get something that can upregulate dopamine, or they can upregulate certain neurotransmitters that make you
Right.
feel and experience things a certain way. And then who knows what type of technology? Maybe there's a massive collab. Mark Zuckerberg, Elon, they get together. They're like, yeah,
Collab.
metaverse, Neuralink,
Yeah.
uh, and it just gets some crazy shit. But who knows? It's scary. It's exciting. Depends how
Yeah.
you're looking at it.
Because there's
But
lots of like promising aspects to that technology for Neuralink.
yeah,
I think one of the first applications they're doing is to be able to like heal or fix people with spinal cord injuries,
yeah,
where it takes over like it sort of hijacks like like the spinal cord or the nervous system, and
right,
it plugs directly into the Neuralink instead of your brain or something like that.
yeah,
Which is cool for those
yeah.
sorts of
If
applications.
people are paralyzed and
It's
that
an
helps them,
incredible
yeah, it's
technology.
amazing.
But then, like you say, like the downsides or the potential downsides, and it's like it's almost like a Pandora's box, because once it's out there, it's like there's no bringing it back in. And if the reality, or not the reality, but the metaverse brought upon
Mm-hmm.
by Neuralink or all these things, it feels better, or like it's more appealing to people, especially people
Yeah,
like who are struggling, if like the world like like
yeah,
the economy keeps going downwards, people losing
right,
their jobs. It becomes easier and easier for people to turn to these sorts of things
right.
as like, and
Yeah.
what happens when it becomes like better than the
So
life that
yeah,
they're living.
because right now for a lot of people, the online life, they'll say, "Oh, it's better." Like they might be in a video game where
Right.
they can do whatever they
Like
want.
Second Life, you ever heard that game Second Life?
I haven't,
You
but
can like it's sort of like the same concept of the metaverse.
yeah,
You can make your own avatar, and it's like your
right,
second life.
right. I feel like a lot of
So
people feel like that, whether it's that specific game, Second Life, or let's say it's
right,
even like a game like Skyrim or like whatever, a type of game where you
exactly.
have your character, you name him whatever you
Role
want.
playing
You're like,
games,
this is
yeah.
me,
You
and
get immersed
you
in the world too. Like they're
and it starts to be where you're more successful and doing better.
right,
You're more successful.
like this big knight or whatever.
Yeah, you're
Like
this big
this,
strong knight that's
yeah,
like getting all the girls in
yeah.
Skyrim, and it's like it's like that is a more appealing reality to you
Then like
than the real world where like you shut off the Xbox or you shut
you
off the
got
game.
bills to
Yeah,
pay. Like
you're like, oh fuck,
yeah,
this is what it's really like.
yeah,
God damn, I can't wait to get back into that game.
yeah.
And like you're saying, maybe the metaverse gets so appealing that right now maybe there's like 5% or whatever, a certain percent of people that they find life is like that, where the life in the online world, they get more enjoyment and they prefer it. But maybe as technology improves, it becomes more and more like that. But I don't think it's that the online world is so amazing. It's just unfortunately some people in their real life world, things are just not going that well. So it's like an escapism to go into this online world.
Right.
So you can make the online worlds even more appealing, and then more people join, or potentially the alternate is you're able to help these people that are like feeling down about the reality. I mean, they're both complicated
Yeah.
paths, but I mean,
Super complex. Like being able to solve that problem of like being able
yeah,
to help people that you know, because like
yeah,
just the economy alone, like
yeah,
concepts like that, it's
it's
so
overwhelmingly
difficult.
complicated.
Even like
Uh,
economic experts, it's like it
yeah.
seems like they don't even know which
Oh yeah,
which way it's gonna go day after day.
they're just
Like the
guessing
Bank of
sometimes.
Canada, it's like
Yeah.
it's a fugazi, it's a fugazi,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a as long as we
Yeah.
all believe in it, it's like
Yeah.
it's real, right? It
Yeah.
sort of has that sort of feeling sometimes to it. The
Yeah.
concept of just money,
Right.
or it's like as long as we all believe it's real, it's valuable, it sort of has value.
Yeah.
And
And I think that's one important thing to look at about just how complicated this whole thing is. So like
just so many.
people will like be like Mark is doing bad things. Mark Zuckerberg's doing bad things with social media. Why doesn't he do this? Why doesn't he do that?
Right.
It's like he's if you hate him, you like him. He's operating and responsible for an extremely complicated and difficult problem. Like,
On a global scale, not just here in the Western world, but there's
yeah,
other countries that have positive experiences with Facebook. You got to keep in
oh
mind
yeah,
too.
yeah. Like
And
they
it's
love
like,
it. U.S. apparently is like 50% hate Mark Zuckerberg, or like a
right.
lot of people have issues with Facebook, and but then you go out to like India or whatever, and like maybe they like him. I don't know if that's the
Yeah.
case, but it's like other areas of the world. Let's say
Yeah.
they like him and they like what he's doing. But I think all in all, and Lex asked Mark this on the podcast, or the reverse actually. Mark Zuckerberg was saying, he's like, what would you do if you had the keys to the social media thing? Like
Right.
if you were operating at the helm of Facebook, what would you do? How would you do this thing?
Yeah. How would you
And it's a good
control
question.
the censorship aspect, or how would you control this aspect?
Yeah. So for
And
all the people hating on social media
right.
and being like, why would they do that? That's stupid. They got to do this. What would you do? And the problem is when you ask some people what would they do, some people are gonna be like, well, obviously I would do this. I would do that. It's like,
Right.
okay,
Doesn't
but
mean it's a
like it's not that
solution
simple.
though.
Like some people for sure might have an answer right off the bat. They're like, of course we got to censor everybody. That's hateful. And other people make, of course we got to do this. Of course we got to do this.
Right.
But I mean, the reality is like
It's
it's
not as
such
simple.
a
It's not as
complicated.
simple as that.
There's so a billion variables, and like
Yeah.
you change one thing and the outcome.
Yeah. It could be like horrific
Like
or
he's really operating at such a high scale that, let's say you shift the algorithm just like 1 degree to the right or to the left, and then you change people like the world psychology a little bit, because now you're feeding
yeah.
people so their pages just a little bit different than it was before. And so yeah, who the people that are operating the social media algorithms are really like the most powerful people on earth right now.
100%. Because it has
Yeah.
such a huge impact. But even like you look like Instagram not long ago, they introduced they're going more towards like video content. I don't know
Hmm.
if you just saw. They're more promoting like videos
Yeah.
as opposed to like a photo sharing app. They're becoming more like a video
Reels and
sharing app.
yeah, yeah.
And so just that like changement, it's gonna have a huge impact globally,
Yeah.
or even on like
Because videos probably keep people there longer. They're more,
exactly. It's just a simple
yeah,
business move, but
right.
it's gonna cause people to start making more videos,
Yeah.
or like start like people who are launching businesses or want to get into these sorts of things.
Mm,
It's like they're gonna have to look at like the video aspect of things,
right.
um, if they want to compete like on the competitive market scale,
Yeah, 'cause
right?
that's like a good point, because a lot of these companies, at the end of the day, it's like any other business, right? It's a competition.
Yeah,
They want their business to do better. Instagram is competing with Twitter, and Twitter is competing with YouTube, and so they might see things that are going to up their engagement, and therefore up their total profit, up like advertisers that want to be on their page. They're going to get a boost. But some of the things that they have to do in order to up the engagement might be harmful for society, but because it's such a competitive landscape, that these are companies at the end of the day, and they're going to operate like any other company, McDonald's versus Wendy's versus Harvey's, they're just going to do whatever they have to do to get more people to buy their burgers. YouTube and YouTube's going to do whatever they have to do to get people to be paying more attention to YouTube versus paying attention to TikTok.
right.
And does that come at the cost of some people's mental health, or the cost that some people's productivity or whatever it may be? Maybe, but if it like keeps YouTube as a company alive, the people that are working at that company are going to be incentivized to do that, because they want more money, they want to keep their job, they want to maybe be the company. It's the ethics of the social media growth is a good yeah, it's going to be a difficult thing to solve, but it's something that they're going to have to put a lot of focus into.
But that's a good point because uh or what was I gonna say? I forget, but
Yeah, it's
but I was gonna, or sorry, I was gonna say that's a good point. about like sort of like the business aspect, because we sort of forget like sort of Facebook and these social media companies have become sort of like the public square,
Right.
or how we communicate,
Yeah.
or how we do like business, or especially like Twitter. It's sort of
Yeah.
like the public square.
Yeah.
So it's easy to think of these things as like sort of like it belongs sort of to the public, or it's like
Mm-hmm.
our sorts of things. But always behind the scenes, like you say, it's all
Right.
these companies are competing, and it's
Mm-hmm.
sort of survival of the fittest. So like
Yeah.
Netflix, like competing for attention
With
with
YouTube or
YouTube, with
yeah.
Facebook, but all at the same time is we're all like like a large portion of like
The masses kind of sway it a little bit too. Like those companies themselves can kind of direct what people are going to look at, right? But the masses of people that are on those platforms also have a big say, especially when there's the same opinions in numbers. Like let's say there's a small business that they primarily use Twitter to promote their company, and Twitter themselves may be like, oh, we like the type of content they're posting, maybe we'll promote them a little bit more, maybe we'll ban them, we don't like the politic, whatever it is. The company themselves is going to do that, but also the people online, if all of a sudden a group of people are like, we hate this bakery because they're doing a certain thing, then all of a sudden,
kind of hard to hate a bakery though.
I know,
They make
cupcakes,
cakes, and
cookies,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
kind of
you got to be
hard.
pretty sad if you're hating
Yeah.
on bakeries. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Maybe that's what you need if you're hating on
Yeah,
bakeries.
you just need
Just
some
need
muffins,
it.
some
Yeah, yeah,
cupcakes, and
exactly.
yeah, problems will be
So
solved.
yeah,
But
but it's it's a huge problem to solve.
I
But
think
interesting.
discussions like this,
Yeah,
like, is one of the only ways that like we as a society, or like just
yeah,
people, are gonna be able to potentially come up with solutions to these complex problems.
for sure. Yeah,
Like social media, so like social media to a lot of people, and myself at times, it's viewed as a problem.
yeah,
And it's like, but there's also, it's important to note that there's many functionalities, or there's lots of
yeah.
great,
Great out there.
incredible things. The
Yeah,
ability to connect, to
chat
FaceTime
with
with your
people.
family, FaceTime with like you know, just people like your loved ones,
Yeah.
and be like on a global scale. Like these things are incredible, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's allowed for a lot of economic growth
Yeah,
and just better
like
connection. But there's
family
like
reunions.
it's a double-edged sword, because it's also precipitated a lot of like problems throughout the
Mm-hmm.
society,
Yeah,
like the polarization,
yeah,
like the precipitation of politics, or
yeah.
this or that. It's never like the cause of problems, but it's sort of it precipitates a lot of the issues that are already
Mm-hmm.
within the society.
And were a lot of them intended? Probably not. It might just be like it just happened the way they designed it.
Right.
They never intended for it to have such bad effects on people's mental health. Let's say it was just from the jump. Oh, of course we're business. We want people to use our service. We want people to use our application. Let's what do we do to get people to come into it more? Well, let's like take advantage of some marketing psychology and let's get people to be drawn towards our product. And then next thing you know, it's like excessively people are excessively motivated by going on social media, and then you get problems. But yeah, they're for sure are really good things. I mean, to be able to reach out to family members that don't live near you, yeah, loved ones, and connect with people that you haven't in a while. Just
Yeah.
even be able to see like, oh, like old friends that like maybe you live in the same city, but you see, oh, like they're doing this now, they're getting
Right.
married, they're having kids.
Or like you're no longer like a big part of their lives, or you don't talk as much, but you're still consider them like a friend, or it's still nice to see them doing well, or it's nice
Yeah,
to know, oh look, he's this person's doing this, or it's great to
right.
see like people doing good also,
Yeah.
because like
And like you're saying, it's conversations. Uh, I don't know if I want to say like these because it sounds kind of arrogant in a way, but like I know.
we're gonna figure it out.
Yeah, yeah,
We're
yeah.
gonna figure
It's
out the
like
social
yeah,
dilemma. That'll be
Yeah.
the title of the video. It'll be
Yeah.
the solution to the
Yeah.
social dilemma.
It's
It's
conversations like this one
yeah.
exactly that are
This
gonna
is
cure social
wink wink.
our social media problems.
Yeah.
And you can check it out on Instagram,
Exactly.
YouTube, Facebook.
This will be that'll be the commercial.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
yeah, check it out on all social media.
We happen to have we figured it out,
Yeah.
guys.
Like, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff.
Exactly. Follow us on
Ring
Patreon.
ring that notification bell.
Ring that bell.
so you get all the notifications
Yeah.
all day long, every day.
Every
And-
single day. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Don't forget
it's-
to subscribe though. Also.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
Uh.
definitely a double-edged sword, but yeah, not going away. We gotta live with it. We gotta keep talking about it. We gotta find a solution.
Exactly. Or
And-
even if maybe there isn't a solution.
Yeah.
It's like,
maybe
what?
it's just we enjoy it. We hate it. It's
Yeah.
what it is.
It's
Yeah.
you just gotta deal with it, like as it comes, sort of like take it day by day, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
You
who
know?
knows?
Yeah.
Time will tell. But either way, I'm glad to get back into the podcasting. Been a little while to have the episode come out, and good to have you on, Zach.
Yeah,
Good to
thank
talk
you very
about
much for
social
having me.
media.
I had a great time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my
I'm a
pleasure.
big fan of what you're doing here. And
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of you as a person. So
yeah,
keep
big
it up,
fan of
man.
you too. Appreciate you
Yeah.
coming on. And yeah, we'll wrap it up. I have to go to the bathroom so bad. It's
All right.
a long podcast.
perfect timing.
But yeah, goodbye,
All right.
everybody. Thank you for listening.
Thank you guys. Hopefully I hit record. No, I'm just kidding.